What's going on?
Electioneering Hello, all. Can you hear me? All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law of New Jersey, notice of this March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Bridgewater Regional Board of Education was posted electronically on the district website and provided on January 8th, 2025 by sending an annual written notice to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Bridgewater Township Clerk, Raritan Borough Clerk, and by posting on the bulletin board in the Harmon v. Wade Administration Building. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Lumsky, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mrs.
Hello.
Here. Mr. Joshi.
Here.
Ms. Loughran.
Here.
Ms. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Pepe.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Ms. Calistri.
Here.
Mr. Singer.
Here. We're going to start our evening with our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. So, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to report that tonight it appears the current meeting is going to be the largest audience in quite some time for our annual budget presentation. So in the spirit of transparency and informing the public, it's a welcome crowd. So tonight, district administration, that's myself, Dr. Jones, Dr. Fonder, Mr. Lomsky, are going to give you the presentation on our proposed 2025-26 budget, which, as I've reported out several times to the community, this was quite a challenge this year. As you know, we live in a time where costs increase at a rate far greater than 2%, but we are governed by a 2% cap. So every year there is a challenge and there's a process to go through, and we're always in a cutting stance every year to trim the operation in the best way possible to maintain programs, et cetera, for the benefit of our kids and our community. So before we jump into this, it's important for everyone to know that the budget process really starts in September and kicks into high gear in January. It's an ongoing process. It takes a significant amount of analysis and decision-making, both amongst the leadership team and the Board of Education. I'm sure the Board of Ed members who are on FFT know from our meetings that really the budget conversation, like as soon as we get through this budget cycle, the good news is we get to do it all over again in a couple of months. So again, I applaud the leadership and the feedback I've received along the way from all the stakeholders involved in this. So now with that, we're gonna bust right into it. So as we start this off, I think it's always important for us to go back to our district goals, because we want to make sure as we develop our budget that our district goals are strengthened and at least that we have the resources to meet these goals. And these goals are adapted from our strategic planning committee that we had multiple evenings last year run through New Jersey school boards. And I'll just go through this quick. And one was We want to emphasize the student experience. We want to create a culture emphasizing student achievement, diversity, and inclusion. Promote opportunities that enable students to become active citizens and contributing members of society. And really, one of our core goals, part of our core mission here at Bridgewater Raritan Regional School District is to promote equity for the students who walk through our doors. And it's really important, and I say this over and over, people are probably tired of hearing this. So what we mean by equity is as follows. That means every student in this district, regardless of their primary school, their address, socioeconomics, race, gender, etc., has the same opportunity when they walk through our doors, right? And that's what we mean by equity throughout the district, to make sure there is access to programs and to make sure that kids get what they need no matter where in our district they may start their educational careers. As we know, in Bridgewater, everyone ends up at the same place at the high school, but the real challenge is in our primaries. As you know, we have 7 different primary schools, so we want to make sure that the programming and opportunities are consistent throughout. All right, another one of our goals for the district was climate and culture. We've been working on that for a number of years to develop, support, and cultivate the whole child and diverse nature of our district by enhancing a cohesive and supportive learning environment. Our finance and facilities, right? Creating an optimal learning environment for our students. And we want to develop a culture of pride, ownership, and accountability. Now, we know that there are a number of projects that are ongoing due to our successful referendum vote approximately 2 years ago. We're carrying on with those projects, and we're doing other things just to make sure that our facilities promote wellness amongst our students, our staff, and also support the programs that are essential for their success. Finance and facilities, that's part of what we're doing here now. To create an optimal learning environment for students, we develop a culture of pride, ownership, and accountability. And then finally, with communications, community outreach, and engagement, which, I mean, it's on full display tonight that we have a large contingent of the public here, although it may be for something else, but at least I'm hoping you can digest some of this and take it home with you and spread it to your neighbors. Okay. And now our budget goals. So this gets a little more granular. It's to maintain our focus on academic excellence and student equity. Our goal here at Bridgewater Raritan is to become the best school in the state of New Jersey. We've got a road to travel, but we're making improvements to our program for the sake of student achievement and student opportunities. We want to remain focused on our student wellness and the overall experience for students when they walk through the doors here at Bridgewater Raritan. In order to do that, we need to attract and retain the most talented faculty and staff we can find. That's critical to any operation. We want to improve and maintain our facilities, and we want to continue our commitment to the overall security of our school. One of the things we're really proud of over the last few years is the addition of security personnel, as well as technologies, et cetera, that have really enhanced the security for the entire school community. All right, and that's something we're very proud of and we want to maintain and keep going. Then finally, we're going to maintain our fiscal discipline and provide the Board of Education and the school community with a budget that's sustainable. All right, that's the key term, sustainability, and prepares us for the future. All right. So now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Jones.
Okay, thank you. District initiatives and curriculum and instruction are aligned to our district's goals, and they're supported through the budget. So for those of you who attend regularly, you know several initiatives are ongoing and they expand each year. So these would include that we've been expanding our gifted and talented programs and services, and this is K-12 for multiple years, and we're continuing to grow them. That includes honors, it involves AP classes, dual enrollment opportunities. The big one next year is that we're implementing full-day kindergarten. Next year it's in Adamsville and JFK, and these will be our pilot programs, and then we will be expanding into the other schools the following year. At the high school level, we've been implementing career concentrations, and that includes visual arts, music, business, robotics and engineering, and computer science. We are actually expanding and improving our programs at every level. So in addition to robotics and engineering, like if you look at the primary level, it's foundational literacy is something that we've been growing each year. We're looking at our course sequencing to improve on-ramps for kids. So for example, we are shifting how we teach social studies in high school next year, and we're starting with US 1 for freshmen, which will create opportunities for AP their sophomore year. We are supporting ESL services throughout the district. You know, at some point it was only in 3 of our primary schools. We had a lot of students who were refusing services because they didn't want to leave home schools, so we've been expanding into all our schools. We are implementing programs and services, and this is really particularly at the high school to improve our graduation rates. And some of those programs we've talked about in the past, the BRIGHT program, Learning Labs, and these are programs that are in place at different tiers to support students who may be struggling academically, emotionally. We are supporting student wellness, K-12, and this includes character education. It includes having personnel who can support students' mental health. It's programs that we're having come in to support teachers and making sure they have the professional development they need to support kids. And finally, everything that we do, anytime we implement anything, it involves supporting the professional learning of our staff. Also, it could involve curriculum writing for programs and curriculum projects. So that would be curriculum instruction. You'll hear more about that from AJ with our minutes tonight.
The next slide gives you a snapshot of our district. Some of these figures are as of October 15th. Our current enrollment of students in our buildings is 7,681. For this current year's budget, we have 1,270 employees. We have approximately 1.2 million square feet of buildings, and we transport 7,846. The difference between that and the enrollment are we do transport out-of-district placement students, and the current budget is $183 million. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Beers to go over the taxpayer guide to education spending.
Okay, I'd gone through this already with the board, but I think it's important for the public to know that when you have questions on school spending, and specifically in your community, one of the places to go to, which is essentially a state database for education spending, is it's right on the DOE website. It's the Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending. There are a variety of categories, and it ranks districts as far as lowest to highest, who spends the most, who spends the least. So for comparison's sake, and I included the link there that we'll have posted on the website tomorrow. So we should know that there are 96 like districts throughout the state of New Jersey. And a like district in the state of New Jersey are K-12 districts with 3,500 plus students, right? So when we look at our rankings, 1 being the lowest, 96 is the highest. That's important as we go through the numbers. 1 is the lowest, 96 is the highest. So per pupil spending, we rank 51st out of 96. So essentially, we're right in the middle. So I know with budget time, there are a lot of things that come out like, oh my gosh, they're spending X, Y, and Z. And yes, we do spend money to provide an effective education for our students, but I think you could see by the state data, we're square in the middle. Not too much, not too little. I believe that for years, even before I got here, Bridgewater was a fiscally responsible district, and we continue to be that way. So our per pupil spending, 51st out of 96. Student to administration ratio. This is how many students per principal or administrator throughout the district. We are 25th out of 96. So again, we're in the lower quartile for that. And then finally, our student faculty ratio is 80th out of 96. So so in looking at this information, what I derive from it is as follows. We're fiscally responsible. We're not top heavy, but we've been able to earmark our dollars to have effective class sizes. i.e. small class sizes. You don't want your student-faculty ratio to be number one. That means you've got kids bursting at the seams in your classrooms. So we have certainly invested in our classrooms, from an organizational standpoint, which is borne out by the data that's on the DOE website. So I think when we look at, cuts we need to make or even our goals for the future, these are certain areas that we want to maintain and we want to preserve for the students who are in our system and for the students who have not entered our system yet.
All right, when I arrived here back in November, I did a brief overview of the current budget and made a few assumptions to see where we think we were going to be for next year. And some of those assumptions when we first started looking were in these top 4 categories of expenditures. For salaries, I took the current year budget and did an assumption of what the current bargaining union increases were of 3.3%. Health benefits, the state had an average increase of 12 to 14%. Maintenance and operations, we outsource custodial services and the estimated electricity costs. I don't know if you're aware in the news, there's been highlights of increases up to 25% in utility costs. And transportation, which is set by a CPI rate, which came in at 3.57. So just based on these assumptions in these 4 categories, it was safe to assume we'd have a $7.6 million increase. That with a 2% tax levy was alarming, and we assumed a shortfall of $4.3 million. So we knew right away off of that brief overview that we'd have to start looking at everything to make adjustments. So one of the first things we looked at, and Mr. Beers has looked at since he's got here, is over the past 4 years, enrollment has been declining about 340 students, which to our benefit allowed us to look at our staffing to right-size our operations. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Fonder to go over some of what we did in staffing.
Yes, and as Mr. Beers said in the state taxpayer comparison, our ranking in terms of how much we spend or what the ratio is of students to teachers has us as one of the ones that would have lower class sizes. With declining enrollment, you would look, if you wanted to maintain that, to have less staff members as the enrollment declines, not drastically, but you would want to have less staff members to maintain that, because although we wouldn't want to be number 1, which would mean that we have class sizes that are potentially too big, we also wouldn't want to be 96 in that category. So this is an overview of staffing. A lot of the board members have heard some or all of this before. We're doing a full-day kindergarten pilot at John F. Kennedy School and Adamsville School. And so because right now we have a half-day kindergarten program that requires additional staffing, that was part of the 3rd referendum question that was passed. So we're prepared for this. The amount of positions that we're looking to add for next year would be 4.5 positions. And that would allow us to have what we currently have at Adamsville and John F. Kennedy School with the half-day kindergarten, but full-day sections for each of those. So we anticipate that we'll have the same number of sections at each school, but they'll be full-day sections, and that's what the 4.5 comes from. Then as far as the reduction of staff goes, this is by level for teaching staff. We have through K-6 a little bit more than 100 students fewer that we're projecting for next year compared to this year. So the projection is they'll have 7 fewer teaching staff members throughout those 9 schools. And at the high school, we'll have just under 100 fewer students next year, and so we plan to have 5 fewer teachers in total at the high school. Because we've been planning long range for this, we already know that this is happening, and we know, as Mr. Lomsky was talking about, the budget constraints. So we've been planning for this, and so one of the things that's happened is even since the beginning of this year, if there was somebody who left their position, if there was a way to not rehire for that position, if we didn't need it for the following year, then we're doing that. And so this means that the majority of these positions are through attrition, that these are the positions that are vacant, either are vacant now or will be vacant at the end of the year for people who are resigning or retiring at the end of the year. The 20 full-time educators of district support services, this includes teacher assistants, CST, child study team, counselors, intervention specialists, speech and related services, instructional coaches, ETSs. These are all individuals who are not the teachers of the students, but offer valuable services in the school. So in total, there would be 20 of those, and then the last one is one administrator, one of the school administrators. We didn't get more specific there because really in a presentation like this, it's not about individual people, it's about the district plan for staffing.
In addition to the changes in staffing, this year there was an allowable adjustment to go beyond the 2% tax levy. It is due to the rising cost of healthcare. Because the state plan increased 14% for the 2025 year, districts are allowed to raise their current year's budget up to 12%. 12% comes from the 14% of the state increase less the 2% tax levy. And that allowed us to qualify for an adjustment of $2.3 million. So we can raise taxes an additional $2.3 million. We intend to only utilize $800,000 of that to go beyond the 2% tax levy, which is a 0.5%. So how did we close the budget gap? Majority of it was through attrition, through salaries and benefits. We also looked at the revenue side. This year we'll be utilizing an additional net $450,000 in reserves and fund balance. State aid was increased slightly, net increase of $185,000, and the healthcare adjustment of $800,000. So here are the proposed revenues. As I said before, it came out to a 2.5% tax levy increase. State aid increased about 1%. Utilizing fund balance and reserves, it increased 10.59%, and miscellaneous revenue is increased 16%. That is mostly interest earned on money sitting in the bank. So a net budget increase of 2.64%. And looking at the expenditure side by category, salaries are increasing 1.3%. So the initial assumption of a 3.3% increase, we were able to trim that down greatly, down to a 1.3% increase over this current year. Benefits, this is not just health benefits, this is everything: pension, FICA, tuition reimbursement. The net increase was 8%. Maintenance and operation, which is utilities as well, increased 3%. Transportation did come in right at that CPI number, 3.56. Other services came in slightly lower. That was due to different lease terms, eliminating certain software agreements, minor things. Some things went up, some things went down, and it netted out to a small decrease. Out-of-district tuition continues to rise. That actually came in almost 13%. This is due to the increasing number of students that are sent out of district and the rising tuition costs of those students being sent out. Supplies and textbooks, we saw a slight decrease due to the decrease in enrollment and staffing. Certain areas were able to be trimmed down without any negative effects. And the equipment projects line was also reduced by about 21%. Majority of that were because of one-time purchases in this current year budget for equipment that are not needed next year. The next pie chart kind of gives you a picture of where all the money is. As you can see, the majority are in salaries. 77%. Tuition, transportation make up the next 9.5%. And then maintenance and custodial, another 6.8%. In total, all those categories total up to 93.5% of the total budget, which are pretty kind of areas that are out of our control. Aside for staffing, these are just to keep the lights on and keep doing what we do. So there's very little room to actually trim. Part of the budget, we're continuing to invest in the facilities. We have budgeted for the high school media center to be renovated. The Milltown side parking lot, which is also their playground, which is in serious need of paving, and part of this Wade administration building. Eisenhower has a few renovations planned in their budget. Ongoing painting projects. We're on an ongoing cycle throughout the buildings. And some of the referendum work that is in line for next year. We are going to do phase 2 of our window replacements. All the primary schools' HVAC upgrades will be underway. Some are already underway this past summer. The remaining will begin. The intermediate schools' toilet renovations have already begun, but will be fully underway in the summer. Full-day kindergarten classroom renovations will begin this summer. That includes toilet adjustments and other requirements. Bradley Gardens will begin their cafeteria renovation in addition. And the high school turf, track resurfacing, and baseball site work will also be underway this spring and mostly in the summer. Now the next slide is the tax impact for Bridgewater. This is a little different than in prior years. Prior years had a mix of equalized, unequalized. For simplicity's sake, I made everything unequalized, and the ratables have increased in Bridgewater pretty significantly on the residential side. So with that, the average increase per $100,000 of assessment will be $16.26 for the operating budget. For the debt service payments for the referendum, it is actually a decrease of $16.10. These numbers may change as ratables can change at any moment, so this is strictly informational. Going to Raritan, for every $100,000 of assessment, they will see an increase of $46.26 for the operating budget, and for the debt service payments on the referendum, a decrease of $21.80. The next steps in this process are tonight, up for approval is for the tentative budget, which will then be submitted tomorrow to the county office for approval. They will review all the supporting documents, and they will have up until April 21st to approve it. When that is approved, it will then be advertised and available for review. And on April 29th, there will be a public hearing and adoption of the budget here where changes can be made. And do I have any questions?
Yeah. Before we get to that, can I just
Yep.
say one thing to close us off? And look, in the end, there are critical areas that are essential for school success. That's investment in your people, investment in your programs, and a requisite investment in the facilities that are going to support your program and your people. I believe we've accomplished this in our budget. There are no cuts to any educational programming throughout Bridgewater Raritan School District in this budget. And I've got to commend everyone in the room here because this budget process has been reinforced through constant communications with our Board of Education, taking input from those stakeholders, and we've also sent multiple communications out to the community. And we really used an analytical approach to meet our numbers. We tried to make cuts that affected the fewest number of people. You know, and what Dr. Fonder had said, we really were honed in on, all right, when people leave or retire, et cetera, to take a look at those positions before cutting others. And look, we've been fully transparent throughout this process. All along, we've met our deadlines, we've taken input, and honestly, I applaud the work of Mr. Lomsky, the Board of Education, and the rest of the admin team in this endeavor. So thank you, and now we can open it up to questions from the board. Is that it? Yes. From the board, right?
I do have a question. Thank you for taking my question. I noticed for the ESL budget that there was an 18% increase. And I was wondering if you could just briefly kind of elaborate a little bit on what went into that increase. And also, I know you mentioned some recategorization of employees. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was wondering, would you be able to fill me in on what I shared with you earlier today, so I know what blanks remain? Because I
don't
think I
have any
did give
blanks.
you the
I'm just-
answer.
I was just asking it for clarification for.
For your
public-
clarification?
No, for the public clarification, I think,
Which category are you questioning?
for ESL spending.
Yes.
Okay, I can go through, Mr. Lee, the correspondence that, if it's okay with you, the
Yes.
correspondence that I shared with you.
Of course.
I'm a little confused about the question because
No.
I thought I answered the question.
No, you did, but
Oh, okay.
yes,
For
thank you.
for, now I get it. Okay, let me look up. Bear with me. Okay, so what I think I sent it just before noontime. Okay, so the increase that you see is, right, the short answer, we replaced an intervention specialist with an ESL teacher. And in prior years, we had two positions that were coded in what we felt was the wrong category in a prior year, and we adjusted it accordingly in this year's budget. So there's two things. It's an adjustment of personnel from one bucket to the other, and then a swap of someone going from a intervention specialist to an ESL teacher. And I had also shared in the email, a few years back, we had a system where for ESL services, you could only go to specific schools within the district. So to Dr. Jones' credit, as soon as she got in her position 3 or 4 years ago, and when I got into my position, we said, this cannot continue. So now ESL services are offered at every school. So how that really moved to an increase in ESL personnel is as follows. Although we had an increase in students, that's one part. The second part is that we had a number of ESL parents who were not participating, refusing services, thank you, because they didn't want to put their child on a bus and put them across town. So now that we offer it in their schools, right, fewer and fewer people are denying services. So that's the short and long answer. Thank you.
May I
Thank
ask a follow-up question before you change topics? For when you refer to ESL teachers, are they just specific to ESL, or do they do other programming, or do they, run other classrooms that aren't specific to ESL?
We're deciding who should answer, so we'll put the microphone in between us, so we both can. So the almost all teachers who are ESL teachers have another teaching certificate. The ESL certificate is an add-on certificate, and so there are certainly other things the ESL teacher can teach, but the majority of the assignment for all of our ESL teachers is working with our multilingual learners, our students who are learning the English language. And in some of the schools, there might be other things that they're doing in addition to that, but all of them have that as their primary job responsibility. Because there's an opportunity to do other things, that speaks to Mr. Beer's point, where at some point back there were a couple of people who were working and had an ESL certificate, but were also doing other things. Now they're primarily doing ESL, and they're appropriately in the budget in that way. That's what Mr. Lomsky was talking about in terms of the budgeting piece of it. The other part, I was a principal of one of the primary schools from 2010 to 2020, and during that time, only 3 of the primary schools had ESL teachers, ESL staff members at the school. The other 4 did not. And so if there was a student in a family who qualified for ESL services with the state access testing, they had a tough choice to make. They would either go to the school that was in their neighborhood, where potentially the kids on their street would go to school, or they'd have to take a bus across town to a different school where they could get the ESL services. So there were a fair number of families who declined services, but then that student was still attending the school without the ESL teacher. And of course, the school staff wanted to find a way to support the child's language acquisition and development. When we have ESL in all of the schools, there's very few, if any, cases where parents deny the services, because that's exactly what the child needs. The child needs an expert and someone who can help the child to acquire the English language. And so we see very few refusals, and it makes sense that then we would need less intervention specialists working with the child to fill in gaps when we have the ESL teachers who are really providing the most targeted service to what the student needs. Did I leave anything for you?
Just one thing. Right, and so an intervention specialist who's working to remediate gaps or working with kids on skills, it's not the same function as someone who also works with students on language acquisition. So when we had that model, it was the best that could be done at the time in the schools, but it wasn't the right service to support students. So that's part of the shift. And then at the high school, we do have a couple people who are world language and ESL certified, and they might have split schedules that they teach.
Now, I know that it's new, just to follow up on that too, it's a new program, so you probably don't have the data yet, but I assume since we're offering this in the primary schools, as the kids age up, we need less and less of those services, because ideally the kids will already be ready to go.
Right, there still will be students who move in who are newly acquiring the English language, but students who've been in Bridgewater Raritan for a long time, yes, that would definitely be the desired outcome and the likely outcome.
I could just one quick note on that, and it's hard to imagine that it was any other way before. So commendation to everyone for making that happen. Because if you are a student who is going to a school and you don't get to know the people in your neighborhood, you have fewer opportunities to interact with them and thus acquire English language skills outside. So that's a huge thing for our district, and thank you. My question is, at JFK at Adamsville, what is the status, both in relation to the budget and just the projects overall, to the kindergarten classrooms? Since we are starting next year, is that, obviously we're anticipating that they'll be ready, but is that work going on now, or are those schools a little bit different in terms of the needs?
The projects for the kindergarten renovations are going out to bid. So it's not just going to be JFK and Adamsville, but it's going to be all the schools for housing kindergarten. And that's going to go out in short order, and the work will be done. At least in those two schools, they're going to have priority to be done by September, and then the contractor can sequence the job throughout the other schools in the district to prepare for 2026.
Got it, thanks. And is that coming out of is portions of that coming out of the main budget, or is that all referendum money, that first question?
The facilities work is the referendum.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
I just have one. Kevin, can you give an explanation of equalization? Because it's kind of can be a little daunting in some ways, and how it works and how that number can change by the equalization number, if you don't mind me
The
asking.
equalization aid, as in the state aid?
Or the equalization number that you have up there.
Oh.
For tax purposes.
Okay.
That's out of our control, but so people understand there's some factors that go into that.
So my understanding is not every home is fully assessed to what they should be. So there's an equalization factor, a multiplier that you can apply to your unequalized assessed value to get a true assessment. The fact of the matter is, when the tax levy is striked, it is based on the unequalized value. So that's why this presentation strictly mentions unequalized. When you get your tax stubs, you don't see your equalized value, you see an unequalized, which means it hasn't been fully assessed yet.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify that for our bank cap purposes, you had mentioned 2.3 million, and we're going to use 800, so that leaves 1.5 million of bank cap unused that can be used in future years should it be necessary to.
Yes, I believe up to 2 years, and then it goes away.
All right. So that will also become helpful. Any other questions?
Just to follow up on that, is that a one-time, is it possible that the bank cap for next year could go up? Or is this like a once every 3-year?
It's possible there could be another healthcare adjustment next year.
Okay.
It's really based on the state health plan, which we're not part of, but many districts, municipalities are part of. So it's based on that increase. And if they see a significant increase, then a healthcare adjustment is offered.
And not to be overly negative here, but every district in the state of New Jersey, probably every municipality, is struggling with healthcare costs. I personally don't see an end in sight. Right, costs are exploding, and it's hitting the public sector, the private sector, et cetera. So, if I were a bet man, would there be more bank cap next year? Yes, because it's hard to imagine a world where we're going to see less than double-digit increases in this budget category for the near future.
Well, that segues well into sustainability, but it's a different sustainability. You were talking about energy costs going up. Are there investments that we're making through the referendum that might help offset that?
Yes, window replacements across the district should improve energy consumption. We're also doing replacements of boilers, old 50-plus-year-old boilers with high-efficiency ones. So LED upgrades throughout the district. So a lot of the improvements through the referendum are through and more energy efficient means.
Any other questions? Ms. Lee?
So as I understand that this year's budget, we included the full kindergarten operation cost from the referendum that passed in 2023. I was curious, in anticipation from changing from pilot program in 26 to the in 25 to the full scale kindergarten, can we account for the increase in the personnel for the year that's coming? I'm looking to the next year's planning. Or are there cuts that we have to make between 25 and 26?
I'll start, and then you guys. What we planned when we were doing the referendum in terms of the personnel costs that were in the third question are matching exactly what we're looking at. So we'll be able to pay for those personnel costs because there's going to be the other pressures like the salaries and benefits, especially the healthcare costs. It's likely that we're still going to be in a place where we're looking to have fewer positions, but we'll be able to pay for all of the things that we need for kindergarten. So there's no question as to whether we'll be launching full-day kindergarten and on schedule because we have the money allocated and we'll be good to go with that.
Thank you.
And it's important to know that we didn't fully utilize the entire salary line from the referendum. We took $500,000 of that money and applied to it. I know we had this discussion, I think, last year. And then there is another $1 million plus that's tucked away in capital projects because it has to be in an account that's a one-off. All right, one-off meaning that next year we know we need to roll that into salaries for full-time kindergarten and it becomes a recurring cost. But right now it has to be housed in a place where it's an account that's a one-off, and we intend to apply that next year because it's what the taxpayers voted for.
Now I'm on. I don't have the file open in front of me because I can't figure out how to open it. We had talked in FFT about graduation rates and the investment that was made into programs in the district, and I thought it would benefit the board to hear like how that improves our budget going forward. Do you remember the topic? We were talking about pilot programs and out of tuition costs and offsetting those out of tuition costs.
I know there are two main data points, and the school performance reports will become they'll go out to the public within a month, but we've already provided that data to the community and to the Board of Ed with our testing report last year. And due to the programs that we added at the high school, being the Bright program and in these structured learning labs, we have far fewer failures. For instance, last year with the graduating cohort, our graduation rate went from 93% up to 97%. Now, it's not where we want it to be. There's still an area to go, but there's a 4% increase. All right, so that means approximately 25 to 30 kids are getting across the line or got across the line last year and would not have in prior years. We were pretty stuck as a district when I took a little walk down memory lane to look at old data. We were stuck around 90% for quite a long time. And the reason why is we needed specific programs for particular cohorts of kids. It's when I get to equity, right? We need to meet kids where they are, whether they're top of the class or whether they're kids who are struggling to get a diploma. And we want to help them all get out of here with a diploma and figure out the best pathway for themselves. So from a dollar cost standpoint, that's one metric where we've got 25 plus kids who are graduating who otherwise would not have. And then two, when we look at our alternative programs, specifically Bright, okay, just back of the napkin math is if you have a teacher's salary with benefits, let's say that's $100,000, right? Salary plus benefits, and instructional aid, salary plus benefits, $170,000, not 170, $70,000. So let's say a grand total of around $170,000 to run a section. Out of district tuition for students in that category would typically run between $50,000 and $70,000 a year. So if you have a classroom in an alternative program with at least 4 kids, you're not just helping those kids and helping them stay in their home school, but from a budgetary standpoint, you're saving money. So it's really a win-win, and that's a great question. Where we're helping kids because no one wants their kids sent out of district, right? We want to keep them here. They're our kids. But an added benefit is it helps the students, plus it also helps our bottom line. It's an excellent. I hope that's what you were asking for.
I have a question, if I may. I'm just curious, I know you mentioned the Bright program, and I think it's a great program. I'm curious, is there kind of like, do you have any metrics on the success rate? What percentage of those kids kind of go in and then are able to, let's say, graduate high school? What does that kind of look like, if you have that? It's 100%.
18 out of 18.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
in some cases, students had to make up more than a year's worth of courses. So sometimes they had to do like 2 sections of history in a year, and all of the students, made that progress last year.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you to all of the administrative staff for that. I mean, it was a group effort, clearly.
It was.
And again, I want to commend you all for, back in January, we were talking about a dire situation. And, going beyond beyond 2% is something that we never want to do. But you were able to mitigate it so that we are looking at doing it for much less than we expected. So
I appreciate that.
thank you all for your hard work. Really appreciate it.
Look, and the good news is we get to start all over again in a couple of months. So.
All right, at this time, if you guys are ready, we're going to go to our student representatives reports.
Good evening, everybody. So first, I would just like to report on the NJGPA testing, excuse me. So last Tuesday and Wednesday, the 11th graders at the high school took the state mandated testing, which is a graduation requirement at the high school. And this meant that the high school operated on a slightly different schedule for those 2 days. And after receiving feedback from all 4 grade levels at our student advisory council meeting last week, the general consensus was that everything ran smoothly without many complications, and the schedule was clear and cleanly laid out for students and staff to follow. Additionally, some updates from upcoming events that I mentioned last meeting is the 3rd annual dodgeball tournament, which was held 2 weeks ago, was very successful and very organized with multiple teachers and National Honor Society volunteers ensuring that everything ran smoothly. It was just a very good turnout. It was a very lively environment, and everybody had fun. And the team Ball Brothers won the tournament. Additionally, the student versus staff volleyball tournament or volleyball game went well as well. The students won in the third set, 27-25. So it was just very exciting, very evenly matched game. And students have mentioned, and staff have mentioned as well, that having more of these types of games would be enjoyed by the community. And finally, just a report on upcoming fine arts events. Our Fine Arts Festival for choir, orchestra, and band are all beginning tomorrow, with the Choir Fine Arts Festival tomorrow at 7, orchestra is next Wednesday, and band is next Thursday. And finally, our BRHS Theater Department will be presenting the spring musical Footloose on April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And tickets are already on sale, and it's looking like it should be in a very excellent turnout, just like last year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Izzy.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to report on some of our competitive clubs at the school. Our Distributive Education Clubs of America, DECA, 4 kids from the high school will actually move on to their international tournament later in the year. Our Model United Nations team, 2 pairs of students, won first in this international competition with over 5,000 students. As well, our Future Business Leaders of America also competed recently at their state leadership conference. An update on sports. As you know, our winter sports is finished. Some of our kids also represented us at the New Balance Indoor Nationals recently. And upsettingly, the unified basketball team did lose in the state's finals to Hunterdon Central. But as spring sports are starting, the scrimmages will begin this week, and we will have a more clear update on that next meeting. An update on the seniors. We are starting prom ticket selling next week. We had our college fair last night, which went very well. We had senior superlatives finished and are looking forward to senior awards and scholarships, as well as the rest of regular decision round coming out. And finally, as you know, this week in the district is the Wellness Week. So we've been watching all the announcements on the BRTV about mental and physical wellness. And a lot of kids have noticed the new initiative to quit vaping with the new vape boxes. And we will just have to wait and see how successful they are. And as well, next week we have the Choose to Include Week, which is run by the Unified Clubs.
Thank you both. As always, you're welcome to stay for the meeting. However, we understand that you've got a lot of work to do, and we appreciate your time. So thank you and good night. All right, we're up to our president's report. I have a brief report, relatively. Earlier this month, Mr. Walker, Mr. Lee, and I attended the Somerset County School Boards Association Unsung Heroes Night, which honored one of our students, one of our seniors, at a ceremony along with other schools within the county. For privacy reasons, I won't go into the student, but very impressive as always, and it's truly inspirational. Our guidance counselor, Laura Carnes, shared with us the deep impact that the student has made on our BR community while overcoming numerous hardships. This is one of a number of events that this spring that showcases our fantastic students, which included, as our student reps mentioned, the Festival of the Arts. And it's always so impactful to see our students being honored and the amazing talents that they have on all levels. I also want to remind members of the public that the people sitting around this table are all volunteers, except for the administration. And we're all human beings. Each one of us is dedicating our time and effort for the betterment of our community. Board members are not paid, and we receive no benefits for working as a board member. Our work takes up a lot of time and effort, time that could be spent with family or in pursuit of other endeavors. But we do it because we care about our community and our schools. There may be differing opinions both within this board and between the board and community members, but at all times, I hope that we can agree to act with the civility that we teach our children in our many programs that Dr. Jones mentioned before. Our shared commitment to respect each other and to support our students should always guide our interactions as we work together for the better benefit of the communities of Bridgewater and Raritan. So I just want to remind everyone that. With that, I'm going to move on to our committee reports. Up first is Mr. Joshi with the Academic Committee.
Thank you. The committee met on March 10th at 5 o'clock. In attendance were myself, Ms. Osuna, Mr. Pepe, Mr. Singer, Dr. Jones, Mr. Moriello, and Mr. Beers. First item was policy review. And this is just part of the board's goal to review policies. And this was just a review. No actions were taken. And this is the 5,000 series that the committee reviews. And these policies were policy 5112, the entrance age, and policy and regulation 5116, which is the education of homeless children and youths. And no action was taken, it was just a review of the policy. Item 2 on the agenda was the seal of biliteracy and multilingual parent-family advisory committee. Dr. Jones reviewed the successful expansion of the seal of biliteracy testing to include juniors for the first time since the program was initiated in 2017. A total of 172 students passed, 85 juniors and 87 seniors across 20 languages to earn this distinction. Separately, the supervisor of multilingual education formed a multilingual family advisory committee, this is great, to engage families and build support for multilingual students. About 20 family members attended the first meeting, representing all grade levels and 11 languages in addition to English. Any questions? Okay. Item 3 was the implementation of Lifelines program. Dr. Jones reviewed the initial steps of the collaboration with Empower Somerset's Lifeline Suicide Prevention, Intervention, and Postvention program. All administrators received an initial 1-hour training, and school crisis teams have been surveyed. The administration team will meet to review survey data. Next steps include postvention training for crisis team members and intervention training for crisis teams, CST, and counseling staff. Prevention training will be next fall. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a quick question on that. Was that Lifeline program, was that part of a grant that we received?
Yes, it was the one that was approved, the MOU in December. So it's from Empower Somerset, so it is grant funded, yes.
Okay. Item 4 was the review of federal and state graduation requirements. Mr. Moriello reviewed the process by which the district collaborates with out-of-district placements specific to federal and state graduation requirements and how students' exemptions affect graduation rates, as was discussed earlier in the presentation. Item 5 was the review of gifted and talented identification timelines. Mr. Moriello explained that MAP testing, which is the measures of academic progress, and cognitive abilities tests, the COGAT tests, have been administered in the primary grades as part of universal screening. Before, we were just inviting folks that used to come in on Saturdays to take the test. This is universal now. However, there is still makeup testing due to students' absences, so there will be makeups. And then the review of COGAT profile. Mr. Moriello reviewed an example of a cognitive abilities test, COGAT test profile, as the assessment was recently administered to all students in grades 1 and 3. COGAT assesses verbal, nonverbal, and quantitative reasoning abilities. In addition to being used as one measure for gifted and talented identification, teachers also use COGAT results to understand how individual students learn and how to best support all students in the classroom. So these tests are really useful and beneficial in providing almost individual student learning processes. Any questions on that? No.
I had a quick question. Are they, and I'm sorry if I missed it, are they, the COGAT, is it every grade level or is it every other?
No.
Like every few grades?
First and third.
It's the first and third.
It's just first and third.
I have a few questions. It's good to hear that there's universal screening, and I'm just curious, are you kind of like seeing gifted and talented enrollment increasing as a result? And how much is it increasing by, potentially?
It actually, so I don't have it on me now, but it should be actually in the board drive, because I know this came up at another point and we presented on it. It has increased quite a bit because what happened was initially we were really offering like one type of gifted and talented, which was composite. So you had to be gifted across multiple areas. And then it was like that year of acceleration. So we still have that, but we expanded into cluster math grouping. So that's in third and fourth grade. It was in fourth. Now it's been expanded into third. And we also have small group investigations that happen across all 7 primary schools. So, and also we're doing it in kindergarten and first grade, which is the law. So now that we're doing all of those things, it's increased an incredible amount. Not to mention that we now give the PSATs to all students in high school rather than just students who choose to take it on weekends. And so we can use that then to identify kids for AP classes, which is, of course, part of that gifted and talented continuum. So yes, lots of progress.
That's good to hear. And I know you've expanded the seal by literacy testing, and I was wondering, are there any plans to potentially expand that further so that kids that may not just be juniors and seniors?
I don't think so yet, not yet. And so what'll be interesting is this year we've had such an increase, and we found that our juniors were as successful, right? They were just as effective really as the seniors taking it. What's going to happen next year is we're going to have that whole group of juniors who will no longer take the test as seniors unless they're taking an additional language or they didn't actually obtain it this year. And then we'll still have like a group of juniors. So we'll see. We're keeping our eye on it because there's always room to expand.
And just one final question. I saw in the minutes that you guys are offering some counselor scheduling so that students can schedule that. I was just wondering if you could kind of walk through how can students kind of schedule a session with a counselor.
So we're actually looking at that right now because we had some questions about how easy or how effective that was. So students can go online and there's a program that they can use and it shows what the different slots are and they can sign up for a slot to meet with their counselor. What happens is counselors are meeting with all students in anticipation of scheduling. So the question was really the timing of it for individual students. And I think the intent at the high school was really to ask the kids to review, the program of studies, which we went through and reorganized so it would be more user-friendly and targeted to kids, to kind of pick their courses. And in some cases that works well. They choose them, then they meet with the counselor and they work through anything they need to work through. But some kids didn't feel like they were equipped to do that because they wanted to meet with the counselor first. So that's what we're kind of working on, different ways to be able to access the counselor.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, I just want to interrupt you. Jeremy, AJ hadn't finished the report yet, so he had actually gotten to the report yet.
Sorry. My apologies. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So I
Just
want
go through it one at a time.
I want Mr. Joe should be able to
Yeah.
finish the
Apologies.
report.
Apologies. I was not
So
aware.
Then we can get back to your question.
I'll go to the counseling procedures. In response to a question, Dr. Jones reviewed the scheduling process at the high school. Students can directly book appointments with the counselors, as they usually do. The committee discussed that while students are asked to select courses prior to these meetings, some students would prefer counselors' meetings prior to course selection, so they would have some more guidance into what courses to take. So that was your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because when we were talking about scheduling guidance counselor sessions, I wanted to make sure that it was understood. That's in relation to selecting their courses for next year. Of course, they can always schedule time with their counselors. I think it's through BookMe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. So there's always a way for them to meet out, but this was a very specific conversation targeted towards that.
All right, so the last item was the committee discussed identifying areas of need within programs and developing additional courses such as Chemistry 2 for students who do not want to take AP courses, but they like the course so much that they just want to pursue, a harder level coursework beyond level 1. So the administration will take a look at that. Any questions on that?
I did about the Chemistry 2 course. Is it like is it like an honors course or is it?
It's just chemistry and then it's just AP chemistry. There is no chemistry.
But it's also hypothetical at this point.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
actually
just,
in place.
yeah, it was
Okay.
just a discussion to see what can be done,
Okay,
if it
thank
can
you.
be done
Thank you.
for future. And we adjourned at 6:30, and our next meeting is April 7th. Same place, same time.
Thank you, Mr. Joshi. Up next is community relations with Ms. Lochran.
Community, I have nothing to report, and a date has yet to be determined.
Thank you. Up next is finance, facilities, and transportation with Mr. Walker.
Thank you. We met on March 11th at 5:30 at the Wade Building. Excuse me. In attendance was Ms. Lawford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Singer, myself, Mr. Lumsky, Mr. Beers, and our guest was Robert Letzo, our referendum project manager. Mr. Letzo gave us a referendum project update, providing the update to the community on all the current construction projects in the district. Window replacements at Adamsville, Bradley Gardens, Crim, Eisenhower, Hamilton, JFK, and Van Holten are expected to be closed out this month, as well as the secure vestibules at all schools except the high school. The bathroom restroom building received a certificate of occupancy on February 21st, so it can be used by everyone now. The following projects are currently underway and will begin in late spring. The HVAC electrical upgrades for Adamsville, Bradley Gardens, Crim, JFK, Hamilton, and Van Holten. The intermediate school toilet renovations, Bradley Gardens cafeteria addition and electrical upgrades, high school auditorium renovations, and the high school clock/paging system updates, and the Barcelona field site work. There were no recommendations at the time. Are there any questions?
Do you know if it's been decided when the new restroom building at Basilone is going to be open, like locked versus unlocked? Is it just for school events, or if someone's there to take advantage of the facilities during the day, like on a weekday or a weekend?
Sure, it's open primarily after school for all of our students who are practicing, what have you. So that's part of the operation now. There's also a water bottle filling station there, another hydration station. So it really helps the athletes where they don't have to go in and out of the locker room and worry about unlocking valuables, et cetera. There's a set time. Don't hold me to it. I believe it's around 6 o'clock. When our folks leave, it's locked up. And then for any event that we have, and it's an option for those who rent out the facility, right? I know there are different leagues that utilize it, that we open it for those groups as well.
Yeah, thanks.
It's really been a big hit. I can tell you, out of anything that's happened, the restroom facility is really. I think people have other tales of the Porta Johns that were on the side, and it's good that we closed that chapter and moved on.
They'll be missed, I'm sure, by a lot of people.
Yes.
They'll be missed, I'm sure. Thank you.
I had one question I got today from a student. They were looking at they loved the fact that we're redoing the Barcelona field and the football field, but they pointed out me in the picture that the Panther was facing the away fans, not the home fans, on the drawing. So I don't know if that was planned.
We fixed that.
Okay, great. So that's fantastic. It was just interesting that it's amazing that a student caught. They loved it, and they said, "Are you moving the home fans to the other side because the Panther is facing the wrong way?" So all right,
so it is backwards on the.
So if they're listening right now, I asked the question. So I saw some.
And the interesting part, when they put the turf field in, we spoke to the gentleman who's going to do the work. He said they come with the cutout in the field, and they have the athletics director and all the powers that be there and say, which way does this face? And then they sew it in and do everything, because probably to your point, they've had a few mishaps in the past where it's facing in the wrong direction.
And we check the spelling too, right? Just in case.
Correct.
Any other questions? We discussed the business agenda was next on the for review. The business manager reviewed the draft business agenda action items for the meeting this evening, and special attention was shown to the 25-26 tentative budget. It was consensus to approve all the action items in the budget. Are there any questions? Seeing none. And the tentative budget. The business administrator presented the 25-26 tentative budget with the special attention given to the rising costs, utilization of healthcare cost adjustments to go above the 2% tax heavy lap, and maintain all current programs and offerings. There were no recommendations. Are there any more questions on the budget? I'd like to extend my compliments to the staff, 'cause I think it was a very collaborative effort. I mean, I mentioned to Kevin, he's like, I couldn't do it alone. He's like, everybody stepped up. I mean, to fill that gap of $2.4 million, and that was in about a 3-week time frame you guys did that, and working within the bounds, I much appreciated that for the students and for the community. Policy update. We had a second reading. We discussed policy 7441, electronic surveillance in school buildings and school grounds. Clarification was given that the local law enforcement has access to view live stream videos as they see fit. There were no recommendations at the time. Are there any questions? Other matters. Mr. Lomsey was informed the committee that there has not been any update regarding the clean school bus rebate program, and that the district will look forward to any potential new solar energy incentives. So Jen, and what you mentioned about looking energy and stuff like that, we have a lot of new roofs, and with the cost of increasing energy, we have lots of solar, and Mr. Lemsky, you were there, explained some of that, so just stressing that. And there are no recommendations. Any more questions? We adjourned at 7 o'clock, and our next meeting is April 22nd at 5:30.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Personnel Committee is up next with Ms. Calistri.
Yes, our next meeting is March 25th, virtually.
Thank you. Are there any liaison or delegate reports?
Real quick, from the Borough of Raritan, at the Borough Council's next meeting on April the 1st at 7 o'clock, or the public session starts at 7, they will be, the mayor and council will be honoring one of our students, Anna Syed. There was an article written about her recently, and a group of students from the Art Honor Society. They went over to John F. Kennedy School and created a really awesome full-size, large mural of the Borough of Raritan and a lot of the businesses and locations on Main Street. I haven't seen it myself yet, but from the picture that was taken, it looks great. I look forward to getting in there, and they'll be honoring those students at their next meeting. So that's really exciting, and thank you to everyone here at the district and at the borough for making that happen. And of course, congrats to the students who did the work and created and envisioned the project and brought it to fruition.
I'm sorry, I wasn't interrupting you.
Oh, that's fine. No, that's all I have for the Borough of Raritan. If there are any questions about that, I'm happy to field.
No, I was jumping the gun, Mike.
That's okay.
Mr. Walker and I attended the Council of Schools meeting on Tuesday, March 11th. And, just so you know, the Council of Schools is made up of representatives from all of the 11 school PTOs. And they announced their summer, they had updated their summer programs, and they've really been flexible about making this happen in spite of, all this work that's going to go on during the summer. And still the programs are filling up, and they're doing really well. They also introduced a program called Operation Elementary. The special guest was Ms. Kuzmawal, I'm sorry, who is the advisor. And basically it's a club that of kids at the high school that go to the lower schools, and they do some really cool projects like beautification, or, if there's an event like the volleyball game, they'll help out. And I thought that was really cool.
And they have an email. They have shirts. They coordinate.
Yes,
They've
and
got everything.
I thought they had a website too.
Operation
Elementary.
at brc.org. So it's great
It
for the
really
students.
is great.
And it meets their volunteer hours they need for different items and things they need to do. So it's a nice project. Yeah, it's a nice. So it's available to the PTOs, even sports teams, or things like that. So it's available. And they added the email because they can't receive emails from students, cannot receive emails from outside district emails. So they gave them an email that's copied to the president.
That's right, administration.
And the
That's true.
advisors on it. So it's kind of a nice way to. It was good working in administration with the students to accomplish a club. Thank you.
Yeah. I often joke that volunteering on the PTO is way more work than being on the BOE. It really is. So, since I have a crowd, support your PTOs. Also, I did want to mention the NFL Pros versus the Bridgewater Raritan High School PTO All-Stars, which is on March 29th. They told us about that in the meeting. It's a really cool event, and it all goes to scholarships for students. I have more, I'm sorry. I attended the town council meeting on March 6th. I don't always report on every hero in our town, but I did want to make the board aware of an event that took place where Officer Noah Lott literally walked into a blazing fire of fused vehicles and rescued someone's life. I mean, he was told that it might blow up, and he walked into it anyway. So that's an amazing act of bravery, and he will be recognized at the next town council meeting, which is on March 20th. And I have one more thing. Thank you. The township also passed a resolution to officially become a Revolution, New Jersey community and announced Legacy 2126, which is a 100-year time capsule project that's set to be commemorated on July 4th, and then that time capsule won't be reopened for another 100 years. I'll be brief. But the first American flag was flown here, and yes, Washington slept everywhere, but Middlebrook wasn't just a rest stop for the Continental Army. And, you know, it really is an honor to live in this town, but to see it recognized for its history is pretty cool too. So this time capsule project intends to go beyond that revolutionary time period, but I always like to mention it when I have a chance. And it's a once-in-a-generation lifetime for residents, cultural, historical, religious, and educational organizations to speak to the future by, I'm not entirely sure, but they're going to put stuff in a time capsule, so.
What's the name of the overarching initiative or program? Revolutionary?
So I did look into it a little bit, but I'm not an expert in it. So the Revolution New Jersey is an organization that like does events and stuff in recognition of the Revolutionary War, our independence here in New Jersey. But the name of the project by the township was Legacy 2126.
That's awesome. Because I'm starting to see things pushed out about, we're almost at the 250th anniversary of Lexington Concord next month. So obviously there'd be a lot more coming up along the line. So it'd be great if the schools were involved or all of our communities. So thank you for that. I'm going to look into that.
Thank you. Oh, that was all I had.
Any other liaison or delegate reports? Seeing none, we're going to be up to our public comment period. As Mr. Beers mentioned, we have a lot of members of the public in attendance tonight. And as we want to make sure that all have the opportunity to speak, public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person pursuant to policy 0167. I understand that people have already signed up on the sign-in sheets. We don't call people in order. So when you get up to the podium, we ask that you do sign in, but you don't have to sign in beforehand. For those that haven't been to a board meeting before, this is the opportunity for the community to speak to the board. This is not a back and forth, nor can it be a question and answer period. Board members will not be responding to questions during public comment. The purpose of public comment period is for the public to share their views with the board. The comments and the questions raised will be taken under advisement by the board. Naturally, members of the public are also welcome to share their concerns and insights with the board via email. We've received many emails over the past few weeks, and speaking for myself, each of them has been read and appreciated. Finally, I understand that people come to comment about issues that are important to them. I again ask that we all act with civility and etiquette that we model for our children. With that said, individuals in our groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted one opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 2 minutes during this period of the meeting. Please be advised that a video of this meeting will be posted on the district's website. We also ask, pursuant to policy, that you provide your name, municipality of residence, and if you're representing a group, please provide the name of that group. Sure. Yeah. Everyone will, excuse me, everyone will have an opportunity to speak. So there's no need to get up and be in the line right now. Everyone can just take their seats and you'll be fine. I don't know if you heard me before. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. So if you want to take your seat and wait until the line dies down, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you.
Ready?
Go ahead, Mr. Pedrosa.
Hi. Good evening. First of all, thank you all for serving on the board. It's good to be back at my elementary school here. I used to be Valley School a long time ago, so it's nice to be back. Is the mic on? It is on? Okay. All right. I'll try to be loud. Okay.
Can I just for all of us, right? We're all neighbors here. We're all neighbors. The microphones work. If we want to hear more effectively, we all have to, if we're all quiet and we give folks the stage, we'll be able to hear them. But if we're all neighbors and we want to be neighborly, we can't start yelling, I can't hear. There's no one who's trying to mumble. Everyone's going to have their chance. I just ask that we have some respect for our neighbors who are up here speaking. Thank you.
My name is Philippe Pedroso. I'm a Bridgewater councilman, and I'm also a father. I have 4 children. 2 are currently in the school district. I'd like to share some thoughts on this board's policy 5756, labeled transgender students. First, let me be clear. Transgender students, like all students, deserve safety, support, and respect. No child should face harassment or exclusion. However, this policy is fundamentally flawed and must be revoked. It is ironically discriminatory, placing the rights of transgender students above those of cisgender girls. The policy states that Title IX prohibits discrimination based on sex, yet it disregards this principle by forcing female students to share bathrooms and locker rooms with biological males who identify as females. The discomfort and concerns of cisgender girls are dismissed and their rights overshadowed. This is discrimination. Likewise, in sports, biological differences matter. Women have fought for centuries for fair competition, and allowing biological males to compete in female sports undermines this hard-won progress. Male-born athletes often retain physical advantages, making fair competition impossible. Transgender athletes deserve opportunities to compete, but not at the expense of fairness and safety for cisgender women. Equal rights cannot mean erasing protections for one group to accommodate another. The policy also unjustly excludes parents from the child's gender-related decisions at school. Yes, some families may struggle to accept, but most parents in our community would offer the love, guidance, and support their child needs. Cutting parents out does more harm than good. At a time when kids need care the most, this policy weakens the most vital foundations they have, their family. This is not about...
Mr. Pedroso. Mr. Pedroso.
2 more sentences.
Excuse me. I'm presiding over the meeting. I will talk to Mr. Pedroso. I'm sorry, Mr. Pedroso, your time is up. I do invite you to email your comments to the board, and we will review them at that time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Sylvester. I am a Bridgewater resident of 18 years. I have written down my address on the sheet. My children started in the pre-K program in this district in 2015. They are now at Hillside School, and they're growing, and they're so big. They're like up there. I can't believe it. I would like to talk to you about the transparency in communication and call for the repeal of District Policy 5756. My reason is because this policy mandates that the school district must accept a student's asserted gender, identity, and name change without requiring parental consent. Now, because I have been a parent since 2015 in the school district, I've received a ton of communication and transparency from the district and each of the schools my sons have been in, which I am truly grateful for. I really appreciate all the emails and texts and everything, and really keep me in the know about my children's schools. Every time there's a fire drill, security drill, or lockdown drill, I get a nice email saying and letting me know that my children are safe. Each week I get at least one email from the administrative e-blast and the PTO e-blast letting me know about what's going on in the school. Then the next communication that I get is to sign papers and return them via backpack or Google Forms, like parent signatures on tests, parent signatures on field trips, permission slips, you know the drill. Online change of school dismissal. All these have to go with my consent. Notes from the doctor that my child could return from the school, all signatures. Then sometimes I have to go through, oh, that was fast. Please, I would like to repeal because of parent consent.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Menendez. I no longer have children in the school district, but I wanted to give you a real-life example of why we should keep policy 5756. Your job on the board is to do what's right for the kids, not the parents. So what's right for the kids is to not necessarily out them before they're ready to be out. I speak firsthand on this because my son, Alex, came out publicly in 7th grade. He knew in 7th grade he was gay. Now, it's not a transgender issue, so I didn't have to be notified. He wasn't changing his pronouns. But the fact that he held the cards, he decided when he was ready, and he did it publicly. He didn't come to his parents first. He did it on Instagram to let the whole world know at once. It was very successful for him, and he is thriving in the rest of his life ever since then. He's had support from both parents, but he would not necessarily have support if we didn't give that to him. He could have been abused. Abuse is emotional, verbal, or physical for parents that don't necessarily accept their child as a LGBTQ person. So I implore that you let the child come out when they're ready, not out them before they're ready, because the difference may be dramatic. And we're talking suicides because people are outed before they're ready to come out. So please keep that in mind. And I also ask Lucy Lee specifically to stop with the misleading information and the gaslighting. You had 6 instances that you were called out on.
You have to, I'm sorry,
I'm done. All right. Thank you.
Sir, just before you start, I want to remind members of the public that all comments need to be directed to me as the chair, well, as the chair and the president. Yes. So, unfortunately, it has to be directed towards me.
No
So
problem.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Frank Morano. I'm going to speak really quickly. I'm a resident of Martinsville, a lifelong resident of Somerset County, a local attorney, and a parent of 2 children in the Bridgewater Raritan Regional High School. However, I'm here tonight in my capacity as vice chair of the Somerset County Commissioners LGBTQ+ Advisory Board. We are a board established in 2020 through the Somerset County Commissioners. Our job is to make sure that this county is the most welcoming and inclusive place in New Jersey. We meet every second Thursday. Please join us. We do this through events, informational sessions, and being available to all of Somerset County to handle matters concerning the LGBT community here. I want to first and foremost thank the members of this board for the last meeting for not repealing 5756. It is necessary. The reasons given to repeal it are incorrect. The members of this board that want to rescind the current policy, I can assure you, this is not the popular stance, and those in the audience, this is not the popular stance or flex, as the kids say, that you think it is. So let's share some facts. According to the Trevor Project's 2024 U.S. National Survey on Mental Health of LGBTQ young people, 54% reported their schools to be gender affirming, and those who did report their schools to be gender affirming reported a lower rate of attempted suicide versus those who are not gender affirming. LGBTQ+ students that live in a very accepting communities have attempted suicide at less than half the rate of those in very non-accepting communities. 46% of the transgender and non-binary student population has seriously considered suicide. Thank you to this board again for protecting these students that you were elected to protect. If this policy is rescinded, any harm or self-harm that comes to any transgender and non-binary student is on the hands of this board. If a student has not come out at home, no blame could be put on the school. Protect the children you have been elected to. With the present policies in place, these students, who we all know have a higher rate of suicide, have a safe place to live as their authentic selves without fear. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Reverend Ann Roloski. I'm an ordained pastor in the United Church of Christ, and I'm here representing the New Jersey Association of the United Church of Christ. I'm here in loving support of our transgender students, and I support maintaining Policy 5756. In my congregation, we are about 40% LGBTQ plus folks, and many of them are teenagers and young adults. Many of them have found our congregation because they'd been rejected by the churches they grew up in, told they were unworthy, sinful, unwelcome. And way too many were also rejected by their own families. For non-binary and transgender youth, the process of coming to terms with their identity is complicated, at times confusing and frightening. They are subject to bullying and violence, and the suicide statistics just shared for these children is proof of the profound emotional and psychological damage they endure. While we would all love to believe that every child comes from a loving, understanding, and supportive home that will accept them unconditionally and help them navigate the struggles of growing up, many do not. The decision whether and how to tell their parents about their gender identity is fraught with fear of rejection, physical and emotional abuse, or being cut off from support altogether. For these children, a trusted adult at school may be their only safe place. Someone who will listen, ask them good questions, and create a foundation of trust can be a lifeline. And with that trust, they can help the child navigate a potential conversation with their parents if and when they feel ready to do so. It is very important to state that this bill does not prevent any child from telling their parents about their gender identity. It simply does not force the school to do it for them. As a pastor, I've counseled numerous families who are going through this journey with their children, and it is not easy. But we turn to our faith, which tells us that each of us, in all our wondrous diversity and difference, are made in the image of God, and that each of us bears within us the spark of God, and therefore we are worthy of love and appreciation.
Good evening. My name is Louise Wolpin, and I live in South Brunswick. I'm a retired psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 27 years' experience treating children and their families, including some from Bridgewater. My pronouns are she, her. I've worked with many trans and gender nonconforming children, some of whom are suicidal, not because they're transgender, but rather due to stigma or parental invalidation. Children living in homes with no history of abuse, who upon being outed were told by their families they will never be accepted. 45% of homeless LGBTQ plus youth have been kicked out of their homes by their parents. The average age of homelessness for trans children is 13 and a half. Approximately 50% of trans youth experience suicidal ideation per year. Research shows safe school adults save lives. I've been privileged to work with trans children from affirming school districts. Using a student-centered approach, counselors meet with students and their families to improve communication without disclosing confidential information. They work with students to develop a plan to disclose their identity to their parents when they are ready. As their authentic selves are affirmed, I've watched them flourish from depressed children who hated school to happy, productive students who enjoyed spending times with their friends. If you repeal Policy 5756, your staff will lack the guidance they need to adhere to all the state laws regarding trans and gender nonconforming individuals. This leaves the district open to inadvertent violations and costly lawsuits. With or without the policy, student privacy and all laws mandating access to restrooms, lockers, and school sports according to one's identified gender identity remain in place. If you repeal the policy, trans students will believe that you, the people mandated with creating a safe school culture that protects every child, didn't care enough about them to ensure that the only policy that affirms their unique needs remains in place. I urge you to keep Policy 5756.
see if I can use the microphone as well as she did. Good evening, and thank you for allowing people to speak. I'm glad to be here today and to speak against the repeal of 5756. My name is Chris Baglieri. I'm a mental health professional. I work for Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care, one of the many places you send those 100 and some odd students out of district. Often they end up at our school, not because of developmental needs or other special learning needs, but because they've been hospitalized in an inpatient unit. And as most of you know, teenagers and young people are not hospitalized for just no reason. They're hospitalized for a profound danger to themselves or to others. As you might expect, a very high percentage of those young people come to us dealing with gender and sexuality issues and with discontinuities between who they think they are, who they say they are, and who they are accepted as being. Those issues can take place at home, at school, or in society, but only one of those domains you have control over, and that's school. I understand that parents want to be a driving force behind their children's education. I affirm their right to speak for their child, to advocate for their child, and to advocate for what they think is right. However, I see the other end of the process. Not just singles or doubles, but dozens and dozens of children over the years I've met who are in the mental health system and whose only need is to find someone to support them. And I want to recount for you a conversation I've had many times. I was a crisis counselor on text and on phone and in person, and I will tell you the most frightening question a child can ask you, which is, can I tell you something? And I want you to think about that. How many times does your child come home from school and you say, how was school today? And what do they say? Fine. Good. They're not ready to tell you how school was, but hopefully, one can hope, one can pray, one can create a set of circumstances under which they'll tell someone. If that person happens to be a teacher, a counselor, or a school support person, let that person help the child find the right path to tell the rest of the world.
Hey, gang. I'm Stacy Friedlander. Tonight, I will be reading on behalf of Nolan Brown. Good evening, Board of Education members, district personnel, and distinguished guests. My name is Nolan Brown. I am a 10th grade student at Bridgewater Raritan High School. Although I am not able to physically attend tonight, I have enlisted some help to speak on my behalf and the many concerned transgender and non-binary students in our district. Recently, I was appalled to learn that the district was discussing the repeal of 5756. This is a district that has prided itself on the inclusion of all students. This policy provides so many necessary protections for its transgender and gender nonconforming students that I cannot possibly imagine how said students would even feel safe in their own school if it were abolished. Interestingly, one of two board members who supported the removal of this bill, Ms. Lee, made it very clear during her 2022 campaign that the safety of each student in this district was paramount importance. With this in mind, I found it very interesting that she would oppose this very policy that provides safety for transgender and non-binary students. Speaking of safety, it is vital to remember that our district, like every district in New Jersey, recognizes the legal practice of in loco parentis. Translated in Latin, that means in place of the parent. This means that during school hours, all teachers, counselors, administrators, or any other staff member is responsible for the safety of each student in the same way that a parent is when the student goes home.
Hi, I'm Erica Taylor. I'm going to continue reading Nolan's letter for time. Allow me to explain why this is significant. Mrs. Lee, a Bridgewater resident since 2014, has several years of teaching experience in Bridgewater's very own Chinese school. As a teacher herself, I am certain that Mrs. Lee is aware of this policy. Under this policy, school staff members are trusted to keep students safe from any threat they may face during the school day, including harassment. As I am sure she knows, it is crucial for teachers to provide a safe environment for their students and to accept them regardless of their identity. However, this safe space is taken away when a student is unable to trust a staff member from their own school with a vital piece of their identity in fear of someone finding out without their consent, which could quite literally expose them to violence. In a case like that, a staff member who revealed a student's identity to someone without their consent would be failing at their own sworn duty under in loco parentis. Let us not forget that every student has the advantage of parents that not every student has the advantage of parents who are supportive of their identity. In fact, many teens would agree that someone finding out about your identity without your permission does way more harm than good. Now, while I may not be able to relate to the experience of transgender and non-binary students, my identity as an openly gay member of the LGBTQ plus community means that I know a whole lot about figuring out your identity, as well as the possibility of telling other people about it and when to do it. Now, regardless of how you feel about this issue, I'm sure that every single person in this room can agree that our children's health is of the utmost importance. With this in mind, allow me to paint a picture that may help some people understand the severity of a child's identity. You see, figuring out your identity is not exactly the easiest thing. Over the few years that it took me to become comfortable with mine, I struggled constantly with depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Now, while some may feel that parents should be involved in this process so that they can help their children with the feelings I just mentioned, I would like to once again remind you that not every child is fortunate enough to have parents who support their identity and will have any empathy toward their situation.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Muller. I live in Martinsville, and I have 2 children in the school district, and I'm going to use my time to finish the words of Nolan Brown, our student representative. On the topic of empathy, I surveyed some of my transgender and non-binary peers when first learning that this meeting would occur. I received many responses from students that were extremely concerned at the gravity of this situation, but one response in particular stood out to me. To quote said response, "This policy allows for transgender people to be respected and supported. As a transgender person, I benefit from this policy every day when teachers and students acknowledge me for my true self. Having the ability to at least socially transition, being called my preferred name and pronouns, lets me feel safe in my environment and comfortable in my own skin. Without this policy, I would feel extremely hurt on a daily basis. There was a point in my life when I felt as if I could not transition out of fear for what other may think, say, or do to me. And that really negatively impacted my mental health, even to the point of suicidal ideation. Without a policy that allows for me to be treated as my true self in this school, I would not feel safe, and it would make it so much harder to learn. Without this policy, I'm sure that my depression and anxiety would also get so much worse. Not being accepted is one of the hardest challenges I've had to face as a transgender child, and I've only been able to get through it with the support system that I have now. Policy 5756 prevents discrimination and harassment. Revoking this policy would mean that I am no longer physically safe in my school, that it is acceptable behavior for someone to harass me simply for existing. Please, I'm begging, don't let this go through. So many kids could get hurt.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kania Langovin. I'm a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and I wanted to strongly recommend that you retain Transgender Student Guidance Policy 5756. This policy protects the lives of trans students. Outing these students could cause severe harm. Our world is so homophobic and transphobic. We want school to be a safe place for our kids. Coming out is a very sensitive, private, and individual process. To take that choice away from trans students in a community where they most likely will face stigma, discrimination, and possibly abuse is inhumane and dangerous. These students know the people in their lives, their views, and whether it's safe to tell them or not. The school should not be taking that autonomy and decision-making power away from the students. If the students know that it's going to hurt their family life or that they're going to get abused because of their identities, schools should listen to the students and protect their confidentiality. In my profession, I treat trans individuals, and most of them have had unsupportive family members, and some of them have even become homeless after telling their families. Unfortunately, our culture needs a lot of education about LGBTQ identities. I feel for these students who are so afraid to tell their parents. For the school to do it without their consent is unnecessarily harmful and dangerous. Students should be able to tell others about their sexual and gender identity on their own timeline, not anyone else's. This is a really vulnerable population. According to the Trevor Project's 2024 U.S. National Survey on the mental health of LGBTQ people, 46% of transgender and non-binary young people
seriously considered suicide in the past year. These behaviors are highly correlated to acceptance from their family, friends, and community. If the school is outing these students, they are increasing the likelihood of suicidality for these students. These students are also facing bullying from their peers. Nearly half of LGBTQ young people ages 13 to 17. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Fernandez. I'm a Bridgewater resident with children. All my children are in the district.
Hi, I'm Hannah Golden, and I'm here for support.
I come before you today not to challenge the dignity or rights of transgender students because, let me be clear, they absolutely deserve respect, protection, and inclusion. Rather, I just want to express my deep concern about how the policy by 5756 is being implemented and whether it truly reflects the balance of rights, safety, and transparency that we as a community stand for each and every student in the district. The goal of the policy is to ensure that transgender and non-binary students feel safe in school, and I support that goal. However, this policy's approach, keeping parents in the dark and allowing schools to make these decisions without family involvement, creates unintended consequences that we cannot ignore. If we truly care about creating inclusivity and supportive environments, we should be working towards bringing families into the conversation, not shutting them out. And yes, I do clearly understand that this does not prevent kids from talking to their parents, but it does allow that type of conversation and relationship to happen, and that is not okay. The policy 5756 effectively sidelines parents by allowing schools to affirm a child's gender identity without parental consent or even notification. This raises serious concerns about the transparency, trust, and role of educators in making decisions that should rightfully involve families. Schools are meant to educate, not act as guardians or decision makers in a child's personal and emotional development. By cutting the parents out of the conversation, this policy weakens the critical support system that children need at home. Furthermore, the policy creates inconsistencies and potential legal conflicts. Parents are required to provide consent for basic activities, medical care, and even field trips. Yet this policy, they are deliberately excluded from the discussion about the child's gender identity, which can have profound psychological and social implications. How can we justify such a double standard?
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez.
Hi. Good evening, members of Bridgewater Board of Education, parents and community members. My name is Shilpa Kulkarni. I'm a Livingston mom and president co-founder of a local nonprofit, Shiv's Third Eye. Shiv's Third Eye works in the space of youth mental health and LGBTQ allyship. I'm speaking here tonight as a mother of 14-year-old teenage gay son, Shiv, who I lost to suicide. You have heard a number of appeals so far with all the statistics and suicidality and other factors being talked about. I am one of those statistics. My son is one of the statistics. I'm here to talk about in support of policy 5756 in your school district. I support that, and I would like to start with Shiv's story. My son Shiv was one of the most gifted in academics, talented in music, sports, and well-liked by his peers. All in all, a picture of poster child that most South Asian parents would love to have. So at the age of 14, when we got exposed to his internal struggle with sexuality and his mental health, we were confused, apprehensive, and ill-prepared. We gave him all the support outwardly we could during the time, but we simply didn't understand or appreciate the nuances of his reality. We were learning and learning fast, but we obviously were limited by our upbringing, what we were exposed to. We had given him help from various providers, psychologists, psychiatrists, different kind of therapists, 100 other alternative therapists. But in July of 2021, barely 8 to 9 months after he was outed accidentally, through his phone to us, we lost him. We suffered the most horrific, unimaginable painful loss, and our lives have changed forever. This is, in short, our story. Why am I telling this story to a room full of strangers? I'm sorry. I'm going to give this because please read this. This is really an important thing to read. Thank you.
My name is Susan, and my children graduated from Bridgewater schools, and my husband and I still live here. One of my daughters is trans. When I told her what was going on, she was devastated. I want to share with you what she told me in the hopes that you understand the danger of rescinding this policy meant to protect vulnerable young people. My daughter realized something wasn't quite right when she was about 12, though she came out to me as an adult. It took her a while to figure it out and to feel comfortable talking about it. I was not the first person she spoke to. That was a trusted family therapist. But she came out to me immediately after. She knew I would support and accept her. She was born a girl. We just didn't know it at first. The path ahead of her was less safe. She would be more likely to be discriminated against or be a victim of violent crime. Some people think it's their business what bathroom she uses and will enforce those opinions. My daughter tells me that, quote, coming out as queer, especially trans, is one of the most vulnerable times of one's life. And if you're in school, you already don't have a lot of control over what you do or where you go. And now she tells me the federal government is, quote, calling you a predator, saying you're a problem, a disgrace, unethical, incompatible with modern society, undeserving of health care or your own body autonomy. She tells me she is a rarity among her friends having a supportive family. With minimal exceptions, every trans person she knows has family that either don't support them, actively misgender them, have turned their backs on them, socially or financially, or have abused them. And these are adults who have autonomy. If you're a kid, parents can restrict your access to supportive friends, isolate you, prevent you from seeking helpful resources, punish you, and in some cases abuse you, kick you out of the house, or disown you. For trans students, school may be the only safe place where they can figure out who they are. Imagine how these young people will feel if you vote against those protections. You're sending a signal that it's okay to marginalize or harm kids who are just trying to be themselves and to learn in a safe environment. And don't tell me kids aren't aware of this. They have access to the internet. They're on TikTok. They talk to each other. They will remember if the people who were supposed to protect them acted for them or against them. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Laura Erber. I grew up in this town. I graduated from high school east back in the day, and I'm here because I care about children and education. And I want to thank you first and foremost for all the work you do and your dedication to that end. This policy came, and I'm also a certified school nurse. This policy came to New Jersey districts as recommended and even marked mandated by the New Jersey DOE. However, in doing my research as a school nurse, then I was disturbed at the fact that this policy asked school personnel to hide things from parents and keep legal names hidden and only revealed on a need-to-know basis. In other words, it assumes that a minor child in this case is always right and the parents are wrong. I quote the policy. Parental consent is not required, and there's no affirmative duty for any school district staff member to notify a parent of the student's gender identity or expression. And I'm sure you know by now that some districts went to bat for parents and were dragged into court for this. But their efforts were valiant and the results benefited us all because it was determined that this policy is in fact not what the law says, nor is it mandated. And the parent or guardian really does have the preeminent right over a vulnerable child's emotions. As a healthcare professional and a certified school nurse, I knew intuitively that this policy puts staff and students in a precarious situation. To hide a student's legal identity and birth name, as it states in your policy, is illegal. It says, and I quote, birth name should be kept confidential by school and school staff members. Just imagine in all the other state agencies or institutions if they could change their records based on a request from a minor child. This sounds ridiculous, right? But that is just what the policy states. The New Jersey LAD laws, as referred to in this policy, protect all types of students from discrimination, and it requires that we treat all with respect and dignity. And that includes the rights of their parents as well. I know these issues can be complex, but as a board, you pledge to uphold the Constitution. And I encourage you to do so. God bless.
I'm going to remind the audience. One second, please. I'm just going to remind the audience, please direct your comments this way. Do not comment while other people are talking. Give them the same respect that they gave you when you were talking, please. That's why we're here. All right, we're all here to listen to everyone. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Aruna Rao. My pronouns are she and her, and I represent Desi Rainbow Parents and Allies, an organization dedicated to building a community that values, affirms, and celebrates all LGBTQIA+ identities. I've added my residence to the form. I'm here today because I'm the parent of a transgender child. My child was assigned female at birth and is a transgender man. When he was in first grade, he told me he was a boy and asked me to call him by his boy name to let him dress in boy's clothes. Sadly, I was so uninformed about gender identity that I did not accept or acknowledge his true identity. My child stayed closeted all through his schooling because he was afraid of being mocked and misunderstood by everyone, including his own family. His fears were completely legitimate. Finally, when he was in college, a close friend who is also LGBTQIA identified died by suicide. Her death broke something in my son. It broke the shell of fear that had accompanied him since he was a young child. He decided that he would not stay hidden any longer. He wanted to be free. My child is now a young man who's kind, loving, intelligent, talented, beautiful, confident in his own body and in his trans identity. I am so grateful for the strength and resilience that allowed him to survive in dark times and to break free from isolation and shame. I want to point out that I am a loving mother, but that was not enough for me to understand and support my transgender child when he was in school. The majority of parents and families like mine have very little knowledge about transgender identity and need a lot of education to understand and support their own child. A small minority of families are even hostile and could actively harm their transgender child. Policy 5756 protects trans children like my son, giving them the safety and the space to work through their thoughts and fears. This safe space is essential to their emotional and mental health, and violating their trust and forcing them to come out before they are ready is dangerous. I ask the board to preserve the safety and protection of all children in the school district by keeping policy 5756.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Education. My name is Aparna Kalbag. I'm a psychologist and health researcher and a very concerned parent of the district. Repealing policy 5756 will do much harm to all, not just transgender students. As you know, the demands of the increasingly dangerous world we are preparing our children for require them to seek safe emotional spaces, not only within family and friends, but within their workplaces and in all spaces they will inhabit throughout their lives. By repealing this policy, we are telling our children that the only safe place for them in the whole world is their family. That school, the place they spend most of their waking hours, is not safe. This is very troubling, don't you think? Let's talk development. From my years of working with adolescents and their parents, I've learned that in order to resolve conflicts about identity, which inevitably appear as our children grow into young people, it is usually the parents, the adults, who have to understand where their children are coming from, not the other way around. It is they who lead parents to a better understanding of this ever-changing world. What I have seen time and time again in my personal and professional life is that when children and adolescents are not given the space to explore who they are, who they love, their sexuality, how they express themselves, their gender, their preferred career, even which sport they want to play or what extracurricular they pursue, they will find a way to their true self sooner or later. And if later, it often comes with a lot of suffering. If you repeal this policy, you are sending two very strong and dangerous messages to the children of this district. One, the adults, not you, will decide what, who, and how you can be in this world. And two, your parents are the only people who you can trust. Study after study has shown that when our emotional needs are met, our brains learn better. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian. I've been a resident of the district since 1985, and I'm here to read a letter to you from a mom who could not be here tonight. My name is Laura Zhang Choi, and I'm a steering committee member Asian Pacific Islander Review parents of PFLAG NYC, a parent of a transgender young adult, a faith leader in the Presbyterian Church USA, a former school board member, a resident of Warren County. My children are Chinese Korean American students. I will not reiterate what so many advocates have already said about why children like mine deserve equal treatment as every other student. I find it my duty to speak up as an Asian American mom who supports her child's gender identity because our stories are still quite invisible in our communities. I've witnessed firsthand what happens to the mental health of children like mine when they do not receive the acceptance that they deserve from their families and their communities. For 2 years between 8th and 9th grades, there were many days that I worried that my child would not make it into adulthood. For families like mine, we also know a disproportionate number of families who have lost their children to suicide because they just did not have enough time for the adults in their world to get it together. No children deserve to die because their world is hostile to their existence because of who they inherently are. No child deserves to be excluded because the adults refuse to create spaces of safety and belonging for them. Even though you are elected by your community, your constituents are not the voters. Your constituents are the students who count on you to ensure that all students have the safest environment possible to pursue academic excellence. You are elected to be the voice of the student first and foremost, and to create a climate and culture where all students are free to pursue the best versions of themselves. Removing this policy will not accomplish that end. It will only make it unsafe for a protected class of students that you are obligated to protect. Please keep policy 5756.
Hello, my name is Michaela Moran. I am 22 years old. I've recently graduated from NJIT. I went to Bridgewater Raritan School District my entire life. At the end of the day, it is not the job of our school to raise students, but the responsibility of parents to raise their children. I find this particular statement wholeheartedly false. I know from firsthand how much a teacher or faculty member can change a child's and student's life. If this policy 5756 is removed, you will effectively be stripping any sort of trust any student could have with the village that helps raise that child. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bridget Moran. I'm 18 years old and I'm a recent Bridgewater Raritan graduate. I've gone to this school district my entire life. I'm deeply connected to the transgender community. My partner and many friends have shared their experiences when going to school. I've been given permission to share one of their experiences. When they were in public school, they would talk to a teacher they trusted regularly about how they were not doing mentally well with their parents, how they could not change anything because their family was not a safe environment. The only place they were able to truly express themselves was the school and their teacher who accepted them for who they are. They told me that if they did not have that teacher to confide in and help them build a support system, they would not be here today. If policy 5756 is removed, you'll be taking that security from future and current students away. It will greatly affect any trust a student would have in their teachers and isolate them even more. Thank you, and please consider how much power you hold over a child's future.
Good evening, board members, parents. I'm Katie. I'm a mom who treasures this district for what it's given my daughters. My youngest thrives in a federally funded special education program, a lifeline that lets her shine. And I'm grateful for it every day. I'm here to demand you repeal policy 5756, as it is a reckless rule that endangers her future and every girl's safety. This isn't just policy, it's personal, it's our kids. President Trump's executive order set a clear boundary. Boys don't play girls. Can I have some time back for that? I know you guys don't like what I have to say, but I gave you guys respect, so I would appreciate that as well. Thank you.
You need to address us,
Yeah,
and
I
please give her
want to make sure you
respect
say
that you were given as well.
President Trump's executive order set a clear boundary. Boys don't play girls' sports or enter their bathrooms. It's a federal law tied to over $3 million a year for Bridgewater Raritan. We had a budget meeting today. Money that keeps my daughter's program alive. Special education isn't cheap, and for kids like her, it's not optional. Policy 5756 defies that order. If we lose these funds, what do we tell our kids? That is their education, that their education was sacrificed for a social experiment. We don't need this policy to fight discrimination. Laws like LAD already cover that. What we do need is to protect our daughters. And I'm going to skip this so that I lose time. Here in New Jersey, my friend's third grader quit cheer. Her team unraveling because they were uncomfortable spotting a boy in a skirt. Is this our daughter's future? Fear in the stalls, injuries on the field, their space is erased. When did girls stop mattering? Some of you frame this as progressive, a badge of honor in a liberal game. But it's not brave, it's spineless, dressed up as compassion. Ignoring biology isn't enlightened, it's delusional. Risking their privacy isn't generous, it's negligent. Gambling our funding isn't clever, it's reckless roulette with our kids' lives. Look around. Parents don't want ideology. We want safety, reason, and schools that work. Bridgewater Raritan has been our sanctuary. Keep this district grounded in common sense, not a causality of a fight that's already lost its way.
Again, excuse me. Again, please respect the speakers when they're at the podium, just as they respected you.
That's a hard act to follow. Sorry. My name is Shannon. I live in the district here with my two children. I did not plan on speaking tonight when I came, so I do not have anything prepared. But as I have listened to so many parents here share that, their top priority is the love and safety of their children, and all they care about is that our children are able to grow up happy and healthy. And I respect that so much. And so then it surprises me when those same parents turn around and say that they want this repealed. And I was thinking about that as I stood here in line, and I realized that there are so many parents who love their children so much that they cannot fathom that there are other families that are not safe places for their children. And that's all I ask of you that are thinking about the love of your children, and ask that you understand there are so many children who are not safe at home. And I know personally many kids who went to their schools for help in dangerous situations. I grew up in Florida, where, as I'm sure you know, laws like this have been trying to be passed for a very, very long time. And kids I know there that went to their school for help because they didn't know where else to go. And that school then told their parents that they were concerned for their safety in their own home from their own family members. And then those children were thrown out of their homes for ratting out the family members that were hurting them. And it's absolutely devastating that these sorts of rules and laws are spreading into areas of the country that I thought it was safe to live in and that I thought it was safe to raise my children in because it's the liberal North. But as was pointed out just before me, our president has made a lot of changes at the federal level that is now opening the door to allow smaller communities that once cared about all of their citizens to make those sorts of changes we've seen in the South.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Wasserman. I'm here tonight as a Somerset County resident and on behalf of the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice. I'm going to give a little lesson about what's actually happening here, and I'm going to stick to the facts. According to New Jersey's law against discrimination, school boards are required to ensure that all students are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their gender identity or expression. That is a law. Policy 5756 provides expert guidance for schools to meet those requirements with best practices to create a safe, supportive, and non-discriminatory environment for transgender and gender nonconforming students. It's a tool to help schools align with civil rights protections. This policy consolidates and codifies existing state laws against discrimination. The controversy over this policy centers on parental notification. The policy actually says there is no affirmative duty for any school district staff member to notify a student's parent of the student's gender identity or expression. Simply put, school staff have no obligation to tell parents if a student requests to keep their gender identity or expression private. In practice, when faced with this extremely rare situation, transgender people represent 0.5% of the US population. School staff work with the student to facilitate a conversation with the parents or offer assistance to the family. Policy 5756 is not mandatory, but protecting students from discrimination based on gender identity or expression is state law. If a district repeals the policy, it must still implement measures ensuring transgender students' rights, including their access to facilities aligned with their gender identity. Removing Policy 5756 doesn't exempt districts from their legal duties. It only makes compliance more difficult.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. President, Steve Beatty, Martinsville. Thank you for listening to everyone this evening. I think you've heard well enough. And I would just repeat, and the proverb I really identify so much with is it takes a village. And I look at that from different perspectives. Growing up, I'm a Gen Xer. I know I look younger, but I'm a Gen Xer, right? I grew up in the 70s and 80s. You know what that's like coming in, and I'm glad. My parents were out all the time. I had someone I could go to, right? I had someone in school. My aunt lived across town, a neighbor, someone that I knew I could trust, that I could go to, and any time that my parents weren't there, that I knew there was somebody else, or if I couldn't tell my parents something, right? Raising my own children. Listen, I have great kids almost all the time, my own children, right? But I know they don't tell me everything, and that's fine. That's how it should be, because I know they have trusted adults in their lives all through their career. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the people that I owe such a debt of gratitude that my children were able to confide in and talk about that I knew might be going on in general, but someone else was really able to deal with that in a much more constructive way than I could, even though I knew they were okay because I had that relationship. And now, having had the opportunity to teach here in this district for 25 years, and I was that person sometimes. I was the educator whose students came to and said, Mr. Beatty, you know, I got to tell you something, or can I tell you something, right? That was me a couple of times. And the incredible responsibility, it wasn't about leaving the parents out of the loop. It's about helping a child navigate their way. It is so hard to grow up today for so many reasons, and kids need every support they get. So please do the right thing. I will say this, we have open minds, let's all get inside. Thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Chloe Dorward. I went through the school district as a child. I am 24 years old. 5 years ago, I lost one of my close friends, Charlie Schultz, to suicide. Charlie was a friend of many of the people in this building. He was amazing. He was trans. I never felt threatened by Charlie or any of the other trans students in our school district. Intersex youth will always exist. Genderqueer youth will always exist. Trans youth will always exist. And there will always be trans and genderqueer youth who do not inform their parents about their identity because it is not safe, or because it is not the right time, or because they are unsure about where they are in their journey of discovering their identity. We do not require that teachers report on every single issue that might conflict with a parent's religious or political views. One much more lighthearted topic is dating. I had plenty of friends who had strict parents who were banned from dating, and yet they dated anyways. They hid that they had boyfriends and girlfriends from their parents. Do we demand that the school inform their parents about the relationship? Do we demand that they inform their parents about the race, religion, and gender of who they are dating, issues that my friend's parents most certainly did care about. No, we do not demand that schools have to inform parents about every single little nitpick issue that might come up about a student's identity. Parents might feel entitled to know this information, but that does not mean that it is necessarily required or safe for the school district to give it to those parents. This policy protects students, and as people have mentioned before, it is the law.
So the question of whether to repeal or keep this policy is not complicated. On one side, you are hearing people bring you scaremongering stories about bathrooms and false equivalencies between gender identity and school trips. On the other side, you're hearing statistics and heartbreaking stories about suicide and homelessness. This is not a hard decision. You have to keep this policy, even if you personally don't approve of people being trans or of people supporting people's gender identity. Because if you don't support this policy, if you don't keep it, you are saying you prefer dead students to ones who live a way that you don't approve of.
I just want to remind people that please provide your name and municipality of residence for the record. Thank you. No worries. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Emmett, and I'm a trans guy from BRHS. When I first heard about the possibility that this district would revoke policy number 5756, I was immediately horrified. This policy was created for the safety of transgender and non-binary students in this school district, with the policy itself stating, and I quote, the board developed and adopted this policy to ensure that its schools provided a safe and supportive learning environment that is free from discrimination and harassment for transgender students, including students going through a gender transition. I personally am already struggling with the hateful anti-trans rhetoric running rampant through this country and the government, both legislation-wise and the murders that are happening. Every time I open social media now, the first thing I see are no longer like cute photos from my friends or pets, but the latest attack on my community. My friends are scared, I am scared, and to see this hate traveling as far as BR just furthers my terror because this district has always felt safe for me to express my identity, and I'd be deeply saddened to see that changed. There are people pretending that revoking this policy would be beneficial for us because it is preventing us from parental support, but nowhere in this policy does it say that we are not allowed to tell our parents. My parents support me and my identity, which I'm very lucky to have, but I also know that not everyone's parents are supportive. This policy protects students from abusive situations at home, and taking that away could potentially put kids in danger. This policy also states the school district shall accept a student's asserted gender identity. Not being accepted for who I am is one of the most hurtful and stressful things that I have experienced, and while I may be misgendered often in other areas of my life, I know that I can count on the people at BRHS to support me. I'm able to use the bathroom that corresponds with my true identity, and I would hate to see these protections taken away from us. And I implore you to talk to the kids in the school district, because I don't know a single kid who would want this policy removed. I will conclude with this. The removal of policy number 5756 will undoubtedly have a negative impact on the safety and well-being of so many kids in this school district, and I would be ashamed to live in a district that strips our rights away. Thank you.
Good evening, Stefania Lockwood. I'm a resident of Hillsborough, but I have close connections to Bridgewater through childhood friends who are now raising their families here and through my connections through the Rutgers Marching Band. I'm a transgender woman, as you might have noticed. I knew at 7 when I asked my dad why I wasn't a girl, and he explained to me about plumbing, if you know what I mean. At 12, I asked my mom why my breasts weren't developing. She explained to me that it's because I'm not a woman. Well, funnily enough, at 42, with doctor's help, here I am. It's an awful lot of fuss. There's about 100 adults in this room. It's an awful lot of fuss for 2 people. You realize that, right? You're making a fuss over 1%, in this case 2%, of people who have identified themselves as transgender. You're doing so, in my opinion, in violation of the school board code of ethics. I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and seek to develop and maintain schools that meet the individual needs of all children regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. I also would argue that certain voices on the board, from what I've seen, are not adhering to letter F. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups or to use the schools for personal gain or the gain of friends. I am honestly speechless at the amount of support that there is here. I thought I was going to have to come in here and be the trans woman who had to get up and make the whole big scene and whatever, and I didn't have to do that. All I have to do is be here and make you uncomfortable, and that's enough. That's enough. My sheer existence is enough to make some people in this room uncomfortable. I have just been called a man in a dress in as many words. Guess who it doesn't bother?
Good evening. My name is Gerald Maglio, and I'm from the Dolores Turco Foundation. Our mission is to protect children from abuse and neglect. So we do not, and we believe everyone is created in the image and likeness of God. We do not discriminate against anyone for any reason. But I'm here to give you the research and the facts, and I'm leaving the national, most current research on the subject of transgender. The transgender experiment is being recognized nationally and internationally as the biggest child abuse scandal of our lifetime. Most states are passing laws that restrict these procedures on minors, and there are two bills, Protecting Children from Experimentation Act and End Taxpayer Funding of Gender Experimentation Act, that would prohibit transgender procedures on minors nationwide and prohibit funding of these procedures. The most current and accurate information is contained in what I will leave with you, the research. Scientific evidence shows that cross-sex medical treatments are harmful to children. The transition or suicide claim that parents must choose between a live trans son or a dead daughter, or vice versa, is false and not supported by scientific evidence. In fact, the most landmark case, which is a Swedish study, shows that followed transgender patients for 30 years after surgery, found that after sex reassignment surgery, the transgender patients were 19 times more likely to commit suicide than the rest of the population. 85 to 90% of children who experience gender dysphoria will resolve their gender identity confusion by the time they reach young adulthood, and social and cultural factors have a significant effect on whether a young person identifies as transgender. Transgender affirming care includes puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and sex reassignment surgeries that are experimental and not approved by FDA.
Hi there, Franco Gradowski, Jackson Township, they, them. Now for many, the issue of Policy 5756 has become not about the children, but about the parents. At the last meeting, it was stated the policy forces students to go through one of the most challenging moments in their lives alone without the people they love. Rather than forcing students to navigate their gender identity alone, we need to find ways to work with our parents to ensure students get the love and attention they deserve, end quote. As Mr. Singer pointed out, nothing in the policy prevents a student from talking to their parents. Students are not being forced to do anything, and that is key. Coming out is one of the most challenging moments an individual can face. However, that is precisely why it is in that individual's best interest for them to decide how and when to come out and to whom. A member of this board also believes that speaking to an administrator about one's gender identity before speaking to a parent is the wrong way to handle this, and that the best support that students are going to receive will come from parents because their parents have been the most supportive people in their life. That is privilege. You are fortunate enough to have that healthy relationship with your parents. Not everybody is quite so fortunate. Students experience neglect or abuse or simply do not feel safe at home, And no, by acknowledging this, we are not assuming abuse. We simply also cannot assume that these students are always safe at home. And whether or not they are, students must always be able to come to school to feel safe and secure. Continuing on the subject, some people have turned this into a parents' rights issue. A reminder, LGBTQIA+ individuals are a protected class, a group of people who share one or more common characteristics and are especially protected by the law from harassment on the basis of those characteristics. Parents are not a protected class. Parents have the same rights they have always had, but 5756 will ensure that we protect our students who are at greater risk of discrimination. Lastly, fighting policy 5756 is a waste of time and money. Manalapan and Englishtown, Middletown, and Marlborough have already lost this battle at both the trial and appellate level. Is this really how you want to spend your school district's time and money? I would reconsider.
Chairman and members of the board, this is short. My name is Natalia Benson. I'm a 25-year resident of the Bridgewater Township, and I'm a transgender graduate of the Bridgewater Raritan Regional School District. I went to Crim, to Hillside, to the middle school, and to the high school. Policy 5765, apologies, is a necessary protection for LGBT children within this district. An attempt to repeal this policy is an attempt not only to allow bullying, harassment, and abuse to come to students, but to make this abuse policy. Students are sentient beings, as I'm sure you all know. Just like you, they have complex thoughts, they have emotions, they have hopes and dreams, they have pains, and they have miseries. If you want the policy revoked, then all you want is harm for students on the district. They need to come out when they are ready. It is not your choice, it will never be your choice, and it never has been your choice. If you want otherwise, you want the blood of students on your hands, and that is a blood that will never wash away.
Hi, my name is Theodore Alexis. I attended Bridgewater Raritan for my K-12 education. I'm currently a senior at Rutgers University, and I am transgender. I believe policy 5756 is a great part of our district, and I think removing it would make Bridgewater Raritan regional schools worse. I think it's important for youth to be able to express themselves without fear of being reported on by their teachers to their parents before they're ready. I think coming out is a very important moment. It's one that I cherish, and I think it would be a shame to take that experience away from a parent and child and instead have it be between a teacher and a parent. Usually you get bad news from a teacher, like something about the child's safety or about their grades. Something about how they're expressing themselves at school should be more private. It should be a conversation between parent and child. And I think it's developmentally appropriate for it to stay that way. And I think that policy reflects that. I also think that it's important for students to be able to figure themselves out without having preemptive measures like being outed to their parents before they're ready. I think it'll happen in due time, and that's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Darcy Alexis, and I'm a Bridgewater resident for 22 years. I don't really have anything prepared, but I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, it seems like this is a waste of time and a waste of money for this policy to be questioned. It seems like it's a great policy for the school, helps the teachers, and it certainly helps students. So it's about the students, and I think that the parents who seem to be wanting to change the policy are just interested in more control. And I just wanted to point out that high control environments, either in families or in institutions, are dangerous for kids, makes them more susceptible to abuse and suicide. So I think it's a better policy to just take it slow, let the kids talk to teachers if they want to, and their parents when they're ready. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Salinger. I'm a resident of Bridgewater. I have 3 children. I have a son who has already graduated from the high school and 2 daughters who are currently enrolled. And to be honest with you, I worry more about them not using the bathroom because of all the vaping than anything else. I've told all of my children that they can come to us with anything. We're open. We support whatever sexuality they choose. All of that, and we've told them their friends are welcome in our house no matter what. All of that being said, if they didn't feel they wanted to come to me or my husband with something, I hope beyond all hope that they had another trusted adult that they could go to, and that's what this policy allows them to do. As an educator in another town, I had the opportunity to attend a 2-day seminar on transgender people. It was informative. I've shared what I learned from that session with my colleagues, friends, family, anyone who will listen. It was very informative, very factual. It's not what most people think it is. I've also had transgender students. I've had some where the parents were supportive, they knew everything was great. I've had some where we weren't sure if the family knew. We worked with this student. The school counselor talked to this student, and we figured it out, and we had a positive outcome with the family. I've never been faced with this situation, thankfully, yet, where a student's been fearful to talk about their gender identity with family, but I did have to call DCP&P one day because a student was so afraid to go home because of a grade. So I can't imagine a student being so fearful to go home because of their gender identity. And this was over a grade, and this kid was terrified because they got a bad grade, to the point where we weren't sure if they were safe or not to go home, and we had to make the call. So that's what this policy protects. I think you should keep it, and I thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Foschel. I'm a Bridgewater resident, and I have 2 children attending our schools. I graduated from the East Building long ago, and I am now back raising my kids. My expectation is for our district to maintain Policy 5756. It is imperative that our public school protects each student and fosters an environment in which they feel safe. Look around this room and recognize that people will become who they are meant to be. And BRRSD should maintain 5756 to ensure that the kids in our district become confident, wonderful, creative, educated adults the way that they want to be. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Philip Jones. I'm a resident of Bridgewater, and I'm also a teacher and a parent of 2 students in the district. Mainly, I'm here tonight to avoid having to put my kids to bed. But on a serious note, this is going to sound like it's out of left field, but I wanted to say congratulations to the Bridgewater High School wrestling program and the amazing season they had. My son, who just started wrestling the year before last, had the ability to go witness them at the States. I saw Mr. Singer there. I saw Mr. Beers there. Thank you very much for supporting the team and everything. And he was inspired, and Mr. Walker as well. And he was so inspired by seeing these athletes, and it really instilled a passion in wrestling for him, so that he's going to carry that with him a long way. So hopefully I get to see him at the high school at some point as well. I'm also going to talk about 5756, though. I am in support of the policy. I do not believe it should be repealed. It's just common sense. And it's also the guidance from the state, which this board's responsibility is to follow the law, implement guidance from the state, and to not go rogue because of a couple board members. And I will say, I think that the fact that it's a transgender policy is simply just low-hanging fruit in this current political climate. And I think it's really about political grandstanding and a hope for some members on this board, maybe an audition for their next role or their next position. And I think it's disgusting. I said this when I was running for board this fall, that that's exactly what would happen, and here it is. And I really appreciate all the 6 board members who had the guts to stand up to that and point it out as being wrong. So have a great night. Thank you.
My name is Joyce Lin. I've been a Bridgewater resident for the last 34 years. And I'm a first-generation immigrant, so my English is my second language. So pardon me if I don't speak clearly. First, I don't agree with the previous gentleman. He said that he's a teacher of the Bridgewater school system. And he said that it's a law, so we just adopt it, just take it, it's already the law. I want to quote him, or everybody, a saying by Churchill. He said, how few men are strong enough to stand against the prevailing current of opinion. Okay. Before I go into this policy, okay, I want to quote something. Okay, a recent report by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which is OECD, published on a university website, highlights the stark reality of this country facing. Okay, let me read part of it. The United States has been grappling with an economic crisis for many years. Many countries now outperform the United States in high school mathematics, exposing a significant achievement gap. Even more alarming, American millennials rank last in mathematics and problem-solving skills compared to their global peers. This crisis threatens our nation's economic strength and undermine the future competitiveness of American workers, your children, your grandchildren, or our children. The fate of this nation is based on our generation. Okay, so just want to quote you that. And first I want to say, the kids' mental problem is not necessarily because they are transgender. Transgender issue is created by adults. Okay, maybe. Okay, and then the reason the reason I want to say that.
Ma'am, I'm sorry that's your time.
Oh yeah, it's exaggerated. It's exaggerated.
Ma'am.
Okay, by some
All right.
very politician try to control it. Okay, by certainly.
Ma'am.
And I tell you,
All right.
I feel.
I'm gonna call for a recess. I'm gonna call for a 5-minute recess.
And I feel the parents' pain. I feel the parents' pain that bring up your children in this society. In this society. Okay? I feel your pain, okay? About how hard to grow up by your children.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. No. I just appreciate people doing this and wasting everyone's time. They could just do it on the, I don't know if I have one. I'll get a piece of paper.
Hey, Dan? Dan? He wants to cut it. And again, I appreciate everyone that has come before and respected the 2-minute timeline. I ask that you continue to do so. I also ask that you respect the people at the podium. You can disagree, but do it respectfully. Thank you.
Okay, ready? My name is Loretta Grace. I have a non-binary child who lives here in this district. I also have a trans child, and as well as a special needs child. And when my child, my oldest, revealed themselves to, first it was non-binary, genderqueer, and now I believe it's aromantic and asexual. We've gone through a lot of labels. They knew I was a safe person to come out to because I've always been an ally, even before I knew what all these words meant. In fact, my kid taught me about asexuality, transgender, genderqueer, neuropronouns, everything. I've never felt left out. They socially transitioned before they told me. And as many of these people have told you, it is a matter of life and death for some of these kids. My own child, who is thriving now at Rutgers University studying history, was hospitalized for suicidal ideation because of the gender dysphoria that they felt. Imagine fighting your own brain every single waking moment of your life. That's what it was like for my kid. One thing that COVID taught all your teachers is that some kids do not have stable home lives. You got a glimpse of that during COVID. Now, imagine that 100-fold. And that's what it's like for a lot of kids to come out to reveal who they are to their parents. My kids know they can bring home anybody as long as they're good people. Some can't bring anybody home at all.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name's Maggie Whalen. I was with the Bridgewater district for most of my life until I switched into therapeutic school in high school. I'm currently a junior in my college in an RVCC to be a teacher, and I'm constantly getting told by teachers that the Board of Ed is not with us. They do not support the teachers' needs. There's a lot of negative teaching stories, and we're constantly being told to prepare ourselves and stuff. Also, I am non-binary. I could tell you a big story, but I don't really want to do that. I did get gender-neutral bathrooms in Bridgewater Raritan High School, and for anyone who's like, I'm uncomfortable with them changing in here, you know, maybe they could change in gender-neutral locker rooms or something. That's all.
I'm Zachary Zier. I was a student who went through the K through 12 program at Bridgewater, and I'm currently at Rutgers University as a graduate student in the Masters of Information. And I just want to kind of give the board something to chew on. Many facts have been stated throughout this entire night about the well-being of transgender and other LGBTQ students. And I just want to let you know that this is going to be, if policy 5756 is repealed, this is going to be something that will be brought up every board meeting, at every instance. This will be a fight you will keep on fighting for probably the remainder of your time on the board. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is the Reverend Rosemarie Newberry. I live in Red Bank, New Jersey, but I'm here representing the New Jersey Unitarian Universalist Faith Action Network, statewide organization of all our congregations in New Jersey, and I'm also a member of SWEEP New Jersey. I stand here in solidarity with all trans youth. Policy 5756 has been in place for many years, giving all New Jersey educators and school staff guidance when needed. They have been trained on this policy, and they have provided a safe place for the trans youth to learn. That could soon be changed after the vote. I weep with you, the LGBTQ plus children who are trying to discover your authentic selves, while adults that are responsible for your safety are not supporting you, depending on how this board votes. The repeal of Policy 5756 will be hard on you, and I pray for you and with you. As a Unitarian Universalist minister, I believe that all public institutions need to hear the voices of love from people of faith. My faith calls me to speak in public to protect the inherent worth and dignity of all people, all bodies, all genders. All are sacred and holy. God, gender is complicated, and it's much more than just an XX or XY pair of chromosomes. It is not a binary.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Husar. I'm a Bridgewater Raritan resident, and I graduated here, and I lived here all my life, and also a former teacher. During my second year teaching, one of my students came out to me as trans, and to the school and their parents. None of my students, my 66 students, ever told me they were uncomfortable with it, and I pride myself on having a safe classroom for all. And none of the parents contacted me telling me that their students were uncomfortable with this trans student. However, they did not have the support of their parents, and because of this, they stopped caring about school. When I showed them that I supported them and I wasn't going to continue to out them to their parents via communication, they started to feel safe enough to participate in schoolwork again and felt like when they came to school, that's where they can be themselves. But let's talk worst case scenario. In my first year teaching, one of the 11-year-olds took their own life. They did not have a loving family, and they did try to open up to the school, and the school did not have their back. I didn't learn this till later. Please don't make this same mistake that my school did. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Seelinger. I'm 25 years old. I live in Bridgewater. I just want to say, like, in the beginning, you guys, on the first slide, you were talking about the well-being of children, the inclusion of children. And I just think that's so important. And I just, like, look around at how many people are here in support, how many young people are here talking to you about how they feel about this issue. They're the students that you want to, like, are caring about. I am so lucky to have parents that are supportive. I mean, I'm so lucky to be in my own body, like, be comfortable, be born as who I was. I had, like, teachers that supported me just throughout my education, and I feel so lucky that I was born female. And I'm sure all of you on the board, you went into teaching because you care about students. And so if you really care about students, just listen to them, listen to what they want. Yeah, that's all.
Hi, I'm Sean Bensley. I'm a resident of Hillsborough, and I have over 30-some years of experience as a mental health professional working with children and adolescents. My latest job from which I retired was as a school counselor in Old Bridge Public Schools. I came here tonight thinking that I was going to read a letter from somebody who couldn't be here, but I decided instead to kind of just comment on things that I'm thinking of right now. As a mental health professional, I agree with the people that have pointed out that not all kids come from safe homes, unfortunately. And if you spend a couple hours with me, I could tell you stories that would break your heart. That's unfortunate. And kids shouldn't be subjected to telling people that they don't trust about themselves if they're not ready. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I know I look much younger, like the guy before said, as a lesbian. And I didn't come out until I was older. Because at that time, it wasn't very safe. I look around at these young people here and their parents who have experienced all the things they have in their lives and who have the courage to come up here. And I don't think anything I could tell you would be more important than that. And more important than the fact that they can come here and feel safe enough to talk about it. I hope that you don't repeal this policy because children know who they are. Look at these young people who have bravely come here and shared their lives with you. They know who they can trust. They know who they are. Allow them to come out however they are in their own time, not be forced to.
I'd like to remain as an anonymous current resident within the school district. However, I will tell you this about myself. I am an alumna of Bridgewater Raritan High School, has taken part in the honor of performing at Carnegie Hall, and later in years performing for a sitting president of the United States, and has worked as data entry personnel for Janssen's coronavirus vaccine trials. And during the entire time, I still have to keep my non-binary and demi-pan identity private from my parents for years. When I was growing up, I already had a razor-sharp lens on everything I was doing or not doing. I was constantly told by my parents to get in lane and don't go against the flow, getting critiqued constantly for how I looked and act. I had to keep a double life in which wherever I was not home, I was happy and loved by my friends and peers. Those in 4-H, my school, and those in after-school programs all were accepting of me. And even though I didn't have the words to describe that aspect of me at the time, if I had the words to describe myself back then, I know I'm cautious enough not to tell anyone unless it's a need-to-know basis. But not every person is overly cautious as I am.
Hello, board members. My name is Joe Shaniger Bruno.
really impressive finance meeting so far. Bridgewater's been doing great. I was a alumnus of the 2004 class, so a while ago. I've since been a public school teacher. I was a public school teacher for 9 years between Newark, Perth Amboy, but I got my start here at Bridgewater as a sub for 2 years, so thanks for the leg up. Then the district, I now practice applied behavior analysis as a BCBA candidate, and I always tend to go for the numbers, as any finance graduates on the board would know. So of the 8,000 students in the Bridgewater Raritan Regional School District, the CDC and NIH published a study in 2023 that about 5.5% of the population would be trans or questioning. That's 440 of the current student population. About 51% of them will consider and will follow through on skipping school because they feel unsafe. That kind of goes against the give students a place to learn goal. 40% of those students will be bullied at school. That's 146. It's a lot more confidential HIB reports that you guys have to review every month. Approximately 26% of transgender and questioning students will attempt suicide in the past year compared with 5% of their cisgender classmates. 114 Bridgewater Raritan Regional School District students will consider that in already a safe place. I think it's incumbent upon the board in pursuing with their goals of get kids what they need and to create an optimal learning environment to maintain the policy that's currently in place. Thank you.
I always do things differently. Those are, I believe you don't make a decision for a population without being educated. And if you don't have children or you don't know any transgender people, then there's a list of books right there that you can read that will help you become an ally. Good evening. My name is Laura Whalen, and I'm a Bridgewater resident for 42 years. I have 2 children in the Bridgewater Raritan school system, one a high school sophomore and one a graduate and now a college attendee. I was the one who started the Buddy Bench at Hamilton, which spread to the other elementary schools to give young children a physical manifestation of an opportunity to practice empathy. I was also a leader of the grassroots organization Preserve Bridgewater, who led the successful fight against the creation of the monstrosity on Route 202-206 that included 400 apartments, a hotel, a grocery store, restaurant, and more. I am also the parent who worked with my child and Dr. Greenberg to obtain gender-neutral bathrooms in the high school. I was even approached by a town council member to lead the Bridgewater diversity group after the incident at the mall, when I replied that I would love to, and I will definitely include LGBTQ people. I was never contacted again. So I know the climate in Bridgewater. I have a child who attempted suicide over 10 times. I personally pulled rope and cable off of their neck. And they did this because they were bullied and sexually assaulted by their peers in the Bridgewater Raritan School District. I am lucky, though. I am so lucky. I'm lucky to have the resources to help my child. I'm lucky to have talked with dozens of mental health experts, professionals, doctors, therapists, and researchers. I'm lucky because this journey has allowed us to find families like us at the Pride Center in New Jersey. I'm lucky because I was able to talk with so many of the kids who attended the youth gatherings, and I was able to give them hugs when their own parents would never again. I was able to listen to their stories. I was able to attend the Gay Straight Alliance and Trans Youth Forums. I was able to meet Carol Watchler, who wrote 5756.
Thank you, Laura.
My name is Jennifer Kitchen. I'm a 30-year resident of Bridgewater. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the absolute bravery of the current and former BR trans students who have spoken tonight. I believe that the parents here speaking about 5756 on both sides love their children. I understand that the parents speaking in opposition to this policy find it unthinkable that there is something important about their child that they don't know. I ask you to consider something else unthinkable, that there are parents who hate the idea of their child being trans more than they love their child, that there are parents who would rather deny they have a child than have a trans child. Also unthinkable, right? But we have heard too many heartbreaking stories tonight not to know that that is true. So I ask you to support this policy to save those children so we never have to hear one of those heartbreaking stories again. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Bucko. First, I'd like to thank everyone who has told their stories. A lot of them are very emotional. You could hear from the voices of the speakers how difficult it is to come forward and tell their stories here in public, the members of the board and everyone in attendance here. I think that the policy does what the school board should aim to do, which is to put the student first. It treats the students of the district like the young adults that they actually are, with thoughts and feelings and emotions and concerns of their own that are very much valid. And it would be a mistake to assume that your life completely mirrors everybody else. As the saying goes, you should not judge somebody until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And there are plenty of students in this district who probably need to have certain members of this board walk a mile in their shoes. I urge the board to not rescind the transgender policy if it is brought up again, and again, put the students in control, put their privacy first, if they choose so. Thank you very much.
Are there any other persons that have yet to speak that want to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of public comment. I want to thank you all for your adherence to the time limit that was put into place and for sharing your thoughts with us on all issues. If you were cut off, I apologize, and I ask you again, feel free to email your thoughts to the board. Your emails are read and they are appreciated. We're now going to move on to the remainder of our agenda. Item number 11, the approval of minutes, is up first.
So moved. Second.
There is a change to the minutes, however, in the new business portion, correct?
Yes, new business.
The vote
To repeal policy.
To repeal 5756 is listed as approved.
Approved, but it should be changed to not approved.
Correct. So I need a motion to revise, to approve the minutes as revised.
Second.
Yes.
So moved.
So moved, sorry.
I need the motion first.
I,
Jen's motion.
so moved.
Second.
Great. Are there any other changes to the minutes that need to be made? Seeing none. Mr. Lumsky, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Asuna,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Kalistri,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion is approved. The motion passes. We're up to Personnel 2519. For which,
Second.
are there any questions about the personnel addendum? Seeing none. Mr. Lumsky, please call the roll.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Asuna,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Kalistri,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're now up to Curriculum 2553 through Curriculum 2555.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Lumsky, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Asuna,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Recuse on 2553, yes on the others.
Ms. Calistri.
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to business 25-119 through business 25-127.
So moved.
Second.
I do that at the end. Are there any questions or comments about any of these business items? Is that you're saying that you have a comment? Ms.
Yes.
Lee, go ahead.
I would like to make a comment about business item 25-124, the tentative budget. I appreciate the effort that the administration put together in presenting us the tentative budget. I intend to abstain on this vote for reasons I think that there's critical piece of information that is the moving part. I would like to not vote at this moment yet.
Just a question. What information were you looking for?
I think I would like to not talk about this because I think they might send the message about district that I don't think we should talk in this forum. I'm
Well-
just explaining why I'm not voting, why I'm abstaining on this vote. That's all.
I'm understanding that, but did you ask this you have questions, correct?
I have, but I'm not going to
Did you
ask
ask them?
in this forum.
Did you ask them?
It's not a question that
She can just
asking now
abstain,
is
right?
going to solve that problem.
Are there any other questions or comments?
But it's
Barry?
operational procedure that we usually follow. That if you have a question, you ask them ahead of time. Correct? Well, that's usually how we do
Ms.
this.
Lee
isn't it?
did reach out to us to let us know that her reasons for abstaining.
Would she like make them clear? Is that what she said? Is it exactly what it said there? I'd like to know because it would come through finance because it was approved to committee.
She's allowed to abstain if she wants to abstain.
Okay. But it's questions, you're asking questions, which is fine. But if there are questions you feel that there's not transparency, is that the issue?
I think we should just move on.
Okay.
Any other questions on the business items? I would like to thank the Hamilton School PTO for their donations, for their giving the Hamilton School the Lead U Assembly and an author visit and the theater assembly. I know how much those kids really appreciate it, and they're very valuable to our district. So thank you, Hamilton School PTO. With that, Mr. Lumsky, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Lee.
Yes, except 25-124 no, and 25-120 abstain.
Ms. Hasuna.
Yes.
Mr. Joshi.
Yes.
Ms. Lochran.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Abstain on 25-124, yes to the rest.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Ms. Calistri.
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
I also abstain on business 25, I'm sorry, I recuse myself on business 25-120, yes on the rest of them. And with that, the motion passes, correct?
Yes.
Special Services 2520 and Special Services 2521 is next.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Lumsky, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Ms. Hasuna.
Yes.
Mr. Joshi.
Yes.
Ms. Lochran.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
We'll be recusing on 25-20 and yes on 25-21.
Ms. Calistri.
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're now up to other 2526 and other 2527, for which I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the HIVs? If so, we need to go into closed session for that.
It's not one that goes in closed session. If I have like a literal conflict of interest, do I get recuse or do I?
Recuse.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing none, Mr. Lumsky, please call the roll.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Ms. Hasuna.
Yes.
Mr. Joshi.
Recuse on 2526, yes to 2527.
Ms. Lochran.
I will just recuse on both.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Pepe.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Ms. Calistri.
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to policy 2515 and policy 2516.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Question on the spectator code of conduct. I know it's listed as mandatory, and this is a policy that's required by, I don't know if I asked Mr. Walker, the NJSIAA. I guess my question is, in the second subsection, the board prohibits unsportsmanlike conduct or action by a spectator, which include but are not limited to. And look, a lot of these things happen at every game, particularly letter C, entering the field of play before, during, or after an interscholastic event. Obviously, I think that's meant to be, charging the field or something like that, or storming the court. Look, after almost every game, there are people milling about. And obviously, I know that we have common sense where we're not going to enforce, take action against that.
I don't mean to disrupt you.
No,
Mike,
please.
But in this case, it's a case of while the event is going on. It's not after the court congregating, anything like that. It's during an event. You're disrupting to the point where you'd be removed from the facility.
Right, and I understand that that's the intent. I know this says, subsection C says entering the field of play before, during, or after an interscholastic event. Would that need to be someone who's also ejected for that? Obviously, if there's a big crowd, no one's going to toss anybody out. And I don't mind having it as long as there's an understanding that everyone's going to use common sense with something like that.
I mean, I think, again, as with all policies, we're giving tools to our administrators and teachers to allow them to use them. And, in that situation, I think the administrator needs the tool, but we'll use it judiciously.
That's understood.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about policy? Seeing none, Mr. Lumsky.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Asuna,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Ms. Lochran,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Pepe,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Kalistri,
Yes.
Mr. Singer.
Yes, the motion passes. We're up to item number 13, old business. Is there any old business that needs to be brought to the table?
I'd like to make a motion. I move that this board repeal policy 5756.
Is there a second?
I rescind my motion.
Is there any other old business?
Yes, I have to mention something related to the policy for electronic surveillance in buildings on school grounds. There was some discussion at the last board meeting, and I have to say it, and I want to offer clarification for the entire community, because I do believe some statements were made that were reckless. The comments made when it came up for review was that there's arbitrary language, leads to arbitrary police enforcement. It may lead to outcomes that may endanger our students. This policy will prevent law enforcement from being able to access systems when an emergency situation is developing, but not currently happening. And the thought was that the community has a reason to be concerned that this policy may be used to potentially limit the vital role that police play in keeping our entire community safe, especially our students and children. So I just have to state for the record, it couldn't be farther from the truth. For this critical fact, which I mentioned several times. The police are the ones who determine what the emergency situation is. When it comes to video surveillance of our schools, we have a memorandum of understanding with the local police. They have a login to our camera systems where, God willing, it never happens, but if there is a dangerous situation, they have a login and can access the cameras anywhere in the district, and they're governed by certain protocols. Nobody's calling me in the heat of something going on, asking for a login and password to access our systems. They have it. And the police are the ones who determine, I'll say it again, The police determine what a dangerous situation is. No one confers with me, and the reason why is this. The law says they don't have to, because they're trained professionals and know what a dangerous situation is. So I've got to respectfully just say that the comments made at the last meeting were patently false, and we've got to be incredibly careful when we're talking about public safety, something I hold near and dear to my heart, we've worked on in this district. When it comes to public safety, we have trained professionals at every level. There's an excellent working relationship. There's no friction between the two parties. And I just have to clarify for the public and for this board that unfortunately that synopsis was patently false.
Can I just say something very briefly? I want to say thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for those remarks. I do appreciate the clarification.
Is there any new business? Oh, I'm sorry. I asked twice. Okay, go ahead. You're not on.
Okay. All right. Gay students matter, and lesbian students matter, non-binary students matter, non-conforming girls, boys, and transgender students matter, and so do parents. And at our last meeting, Ms. Lee made a motion to send the policy to committee. And at one point, Ms. Jones, you asked, well, what do you want us to do? There was never a response to that until much later in our meeting, in which Ms. Lee also said again that she would hope that the academic committee would review the policy, including alternative policies. And one of them that she named was the NJSBA sample discretionary policy titled Gender Identity and Expression. There are several reasons why I think this policy is more inclusive. It addresses many of the concerns that people have brought to this board, that board members have discussed, without taking away anything, without outing anybody. And I think it would be a disservice to not review this policy and consider it in place of the current one that we have. I gotta tell you, this is a lot of pressure, so I didn't really have a fully formed speech here. There are several factors that I think is worth noting. First, it addresses the concerns from both supporters and critics of the transgender policy by allowing case-by-case accommodations, engaging parents when appropriate, and ensuring privacy protections for all students. Its title and language are more inclusive, ensuring that gender nonconforming and non-transgender students are also considered. It prevents potential conflicts by offering privacy accommodations to any student who feels uncomfortable. And it creates a framework for fairness in athletics rather than enforcing a blanket policy that can lead to controversy. In contrast, while our current policy is strong in its commitment to protecting transgender students, it lacks the flexibility and inclusive language needed to ensure that all students and parents feel heard and respected. Now, I have a lot more notes and comments, but it's pretty late now. I would ask if anybody has read the policy and reviewed it, and if you want to comment on it, feel free. But that's my position on this issue.
Can I ask, did you get that straight from NJSBA, or are you looking at a district that adopted that policy or a version of it?
Thank you for that question. Questions I can do. It was sent to me by another board member who got it off of the NJSBA site, and on follow-up, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of this board member, but on follow-up, it was confirmed that it has been instituted or adopted in other districts, which is also a comment that Ms. Lee had made at the last meeting, and there were several other facts and stuff, but I don't want to speak secondhand to those.
Thank you.
The question is, can this be sent to committee for review so that we can put the two side by side to understand the differences between them?
Okay, there's just a growing frustration. I'm sorry. This is based on the law. So yes,
So is
the
this policy.
wording, I've got to respectfully finish. As the person who does run this district, I would hope that my opinion maybe does hold a little bit of weight. The change in policy will do absolutely zero. And I'll say it again. It will do nothing to change our practice and protocols. It is a pure political game. That's all it is. And I know people have their talking points, but this is about politics. Day to day in these schools, we have procedures that we follow, and it's based on the law. I went through it at the last meeting. That's not going to change. And honestly, if members of the board want to go and wordsmith because it's more politically palatable, I think you do that on your own. But you know, instead, the academic committee, the last time I checked, we're trying to raise test scores. We're trying to focus on student outcomes, student well-beings, and all the above. And I think our time and focus has been really diverted from a policy. Wait, when did it get instituted? In 2019. I'm sorry, but the Strauss-Esme was 19. 2019. The law was 2017. That's my editorial. The board is free to do what they want, but I can tell you as someone who, and the folks here who the last time I checked are the ones who are running this district day to day, it has no bearing on anything we do. And I do hope that there is a respect for administrative time from this board. And look, I have tremendous respect for everyone who came here and spoke tonight. But this was all due to a political stunt, and it was no more than that.
One thing I want to say, the reason that no answer was given is because it was put to vote. So before we could do anything, it was put to vote, and it was voted down.
I understand that.
So that was
this policy wasn't voted down. But first of all, politics are directly tied to policy. We are elected based on our character and based on who believes that we represent them. And our job as a Board of Education is to review policy. So I didn't bring this up because I'm being political. I brought this up because I listened to everybody at the board meeting. Every word, I transcribed it all by hand. Every single word that was spoken. So I reviewed the policy. And if you haven't reviewed the policy and you're going to call this a political stunt, because I believe that, in my opinion, this is more inclusive of so many of the LGB and Qs that were referenced here tonight. No, wait. I'll get to the T. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I don't talk to the, I can't talk. So many LGBTQs were referenced here tonight, especially in stats. And I forget the name of it, it's here. my mind's a little all over the place. But the only reference in the policy is transgender. So what I'm saying is that this policy is more inclusive of the rest of those same people in the LGBTQ community. And I think it's worth consideration.
If I may,
I would like to make a comment too, and this isn't in reference to your request at all, Jen, but this is in reference to just how you introduced it with, I think, is how AJ was saying it, and I just want to clarify. So when the topic came up at the last board meeting, I know. I'm saying just now when you introduced this as, you know, the conversation happening last time. So when the topic came up last time with Lucy, I very genuinely tried to have an understanding of exactly what the request was. And I think, you know, for all of you who have been on committee with me for I don't know how long, you know that that's how I approach things. I also listen. And so as I was trying to understand if the request, are we just reading it? Are we reading it with a purpose? The note passing situation happened. And then at that point, like I said something, and then Jeremy called it to a vote. And that ended the conversation for me, because once it was voted on, and it was, you know, I didn't consider another policy at that point. So I just want to be clear, because I feel like, you know, the public's watching this too. And it wasn't that anything was shut down. It was just things moved very quickly, and it was, a motion was made, and it was called for a vote, I feel, without maybe most people being prepared for that. But that's, you know, just my observation. So just to clarify, it wasn't, you know.
Absolutely, and for that matter, I wouldn't expect any practice to be changed in the school that protects students, all students. And I'm not asking that. I followed up. Actually, I followed up because another board member had reviewed the policy, and we spent hours researching this. I have the original law. I have several versions of the recommendations that were sent that are all different. I have each version of the policy, and I did my due diligence. And so I stand firm in my conviction that this policy is a far better policy that represents a more inclusive gender identity and expression policy. So that is why I'm asking, how does this policy get reviewed? And what would be the next steps in determining whether or not this is worth reviewing, implementing?
But I'm a little confused. You're saying this is more inclusive. So what do you want to review?
She's asking to review NJSBA 5415.
Okay, all right. So NJSBA versus what we have Strauss estimate. So
5145.
So Lucy emailed right before, or as we were starting the meeting, to put this on the agenda, and I responded to her.
No, that was different.
Right, no, but we will. I said we will review at a future meeting. So it will be reviewed at a future meeting. We'll put it on the agenda. What you're asking will be added as, you know, in addition to what Lucy has asked. So we will take a look.
And what is the time frame? Because I think this is critical, where again, take my advice with a grain of salt. I think everyone needs to take a collective deep breath here. And okay, it'll be reviewed by committee, but not next month.
Well,
let's take a little time. You know, and like I said, I've got to clarify something just for the record. There's one iteration of the DOE guidance that I'm aware of, and it's entitled Transgender Student Guidance for School Districts. That's it. Goes through everything, and the Strauss estimate policy is basically a cut and paste. I mean, no one went on a riff with this policy. It's basically the same. So I would just be careful because things are politically charged. I think we pride ourselves in the distance we've come as an institution. I know since I've been here, since Ms. Jones has been here, since this leadership team has been here. And I certainly don't want a message that we are looking to change things because I still don't know why we're doing this. And there has to, like with any action, there's got to be a why. Right? So there's guidance on transgender students, but we're going to review the guidance. I don't even know why we're doing it. And I'll still say, just like the last time, whether we like it or not, if people out there do not like this law or this policy, you're protesting it in the wrong place. We don't legislate here in Bridgewater. They legislate in Trenton. Guidance comes out, and policy is based on the guidance from the DOE. And I've got to tell you, as the leader of this district, in our practice, we are following the guidance from the DOE, and we're not going to deviate from that. And if people need to escort me out the door, have at it. But we're going to follow this guidance.
Great. So the law was passed, I believe, we were told, during the Christie administration. I'm pretty sure a lot has changed.
2017.
A lot has changed since 2017 in gender identification. There's been so many new documentaries and universities and studies. And what I will say is that this policy does follow the guidance. And in fact, not only does it follow the guidance, but then it also lists laws against discrimination, inquiry, or no sex discrimination, sexes of teachers. Like there's an entire cross-reference that's in the back part of this policy that it references. And it was written by the NJSBA, and I can tell you that I believe that the NJSBA absolutely has students' best interest at heart when they do just about everything. So I feel like it's worth consideration simply because it's just a better policy. It really is. And you can, opine on how you feel about the political situation, but this was brought to this table. I didn't know about this policy until this was brought to this table, and we got dozens of emails, and I read every single one of them, and I did all the research. And yeah, it got voted down, and I was one of the votes. And I was one of the votes, but what did I say? I said, I don't know if I understand this policy. This policy is based on a whole lot more than just the guidance. It's actually thoughtful, and it gives consideration. And I wish that I got thoughtful consideration, and you just, let me have the opinion as a board member that represents this community that maybe it's worth the time for this, worth our time and money as a board to review it. And if you want to come back and tell me that you don't think that there's anything worthwhile in this policy, that's fine. I'll accept your opinion, but read it and come back to me and tell me that it's not worth our time.
Just so you know, I have read it. I've read it. Just if there's an accusation that I'm unfamiliar with it, that's patently false.
But you're not a voting member of the board that adopts policy.
So a little conversation about policy. 11 years ago, myself and there's some other people in the room that spent almost 2 years transferring from School Board Association policy to Strauss-Esme. There are different ways those policies are written by the two organizations. And looking at these two policies, which I have this policy in front of me, I have the guidance in front of me, I've had it for weeks and read it and looked through it myself also, I've done my due diligence, is Strauss-Esme puts the administrative code and links in the document and you're reading it along with it. So it reads a little differently than the NJSBA document. For those who have looked at it, I see anybody? I've looked at it. You understand what I'm talking about. So it reads a little differently. So you see the reference to code right away. I have some reservations about this one. I have reservations about a lot of policies, but on this one, it does hit some areas, but maybe not all. Is it better? Ultimately, will changing this policy confuse or do any more, or will leaving it where it is? That's my question. What's the end effect of changing this policy?
It addresses gender identity and expression. And I've heard several people speak tonight and make reference to binary, non-binary, to several other different groups of people that don't fall into the specific category of transgender. And it makes reference to that. And it also is a lot clearer about the relationships and everything else.
In the first line, paragraph of the document, it talks about generally makes it unlawful for schools to subject individuals to differential treatment for treatment of gender identity and expression. That's in the first paragraph. Title IX it references, which the other document does not reference Title IX. In our policy. The other policy does not reference Title IX at all. It specifically prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex and federally funded educational programs and activities. So in the first paragraph, it references both the New Jersey statute, Title IX, which is a federal statute, and the U.S. Code.
Then why is the title of the policy
and then NJSA also
transgender
says
policy?
directs the Commission of Education to establish guidelines. The policy indicates why this was done. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of concerned that in the difference of the policy, I'd rather see the justification up front in that area. And I've read a lot of policy and spent many hours looking on this.
The
when you look at the
justification
policy.
of what? It
The
says
justification of the policy. It doesn't say, the other ones say, NJSL 18A 36-41 directs the Commission of Education to establish guidelines outlining this policy to provide direction to schools in addressing common issues concerning the needs of transgender students and to assist the schools in establishing policy and procedures that ensure a supportive and non-discriminating environment for transgender students. The first part of the first...
Mr. President, can I
Well, I'm not
be
going to...
recognized?
When someone else is speaking?
Absolutely.
Then no.
Okay.
So, Barry, are you finished?
When I look at policy, it's when you're reading an author in a certain tone and writing. You know who writes it. I'm concerned that the policy NJSBA, which I'm a very supportive member of NJSBA and think they do great work, I'm not sure I like the policy any better, and I'm not sure it meets the needs any better. But if you want to go to policies, if you want to send a committee, let them discuss it.
So,
I'm good with that if you want to have that
Before you move-
conversation.
before you go on, Lucy, Jen, your request has been heard by the chair and by the administrator. They have said that they will take it up. It will be taken up to review both policies to see whether there is any difference between them that is worthy of attention. We've spent a lot of time on this, but Lucy, by all means, if you want to have a comment, please make it quick.
Make it quick? I don't know. Because I think today there's a lot of things that's said. As always, I want to appreciate everyone who come to speak on both sides.
Lucy, we're talking to the board.
Okay. I appreciate everyone from the public who came to speak to our board. And I think that was a great effort that was made from everyone. Some of them are out of town. And I appreciate that their opinion as well. While I think our own residents' voice and students' voice, I would absolutely put more emphasis on. I think we here as the legislative body for our district, we look out for the students, all the students in our district. I believe there's assumptions that were made out of the reasons that we are discussing this policy. I think those assumptions were wrong. And it is wrong to base off the assumption and make your actions. I would like to point out that how the meeting went down last time was a little bit unusual. If I can take the chance to answer Ms. Jones' question, you asked me what do I like to get reviewed in the committee. I think that Ms. Loughran had really, I appreciate her actually listening to what was said during last meeting. Well, there was a lot of emotions that charged discussion that really got the information buried in our emotions. So I believe there is no one that come from a place of hate. There was no one come from a place to take away protection. Everyone here cares about our students. And I care so much that I want it done right. That's why I wanted to bring to our board the attention of an alternative policy, which I believe takes into account more parental involvement. It takes into account more people that needs to be protected, not just as it's titled transgender policy. I had made it very clear in my last meeting that I would like this board to take a look at this policy because the status of it being marked as mandatory exceeded its guideline. And the guideline itself has been challenged in court for exceeding its enabling law. I need our board, our committee, to take a look at it. Compare it with the NJSBA policy, which has been adopted by many school districts, which I also believe has the merit to protect a lot of students. Many of them, people come to speak to us today or have a relationship to. So I don't know how do we move on from this, but I think I have an issue with the current Strauss Esme 5756 for reasons that I have already stated, and for reasons that many of the people in public have concern about, and particularly about how parental involvement hasn't been the default rather than the exception. The NJSBA policy had made it clear. Let me read the excerpt of it. The board believes that fostering this understanding successfully requires cooperation and good communication between the parents, guardians, school administration, school staff, and the school community. The chief school administrator shall ensure that students with gender identity or expression concerns and their parents, guardians shall be given the opportunity to discuss these issues and participate in education planning and programming for their students. I believe this policy gives our school personnel their professional opinion to judge the situation and not blanketly one size fits all to not tell. I think that actually is in accordance with many of what people from the audience were talking about. So I would like to see how do we support this position of looking at this issue, because clearly people from the community out of supporting the students would like more involvement from parents' side.
So instead of asking that last time, you seconded a vote
to repeal the policy.
to repeal the policy. Why didn't you just ask this last time and save everybody the trouble of coming out and doing this? You could have
Well,
asked
wait.
that.
Could I just first? I want to say something to the parents before, like it's our meeting. First, I want to say something to about the parents portion of it. I can hear you. I can hear the talking back. It's like, come on. To the portion about parents, yes, it encourages open communication and it suggests a balanced approach, but it also addresses that not every student comes from a safe home environment. So I understand what Lucy was saying, but I don't agree exactly with how it came out. Essentially, it follows the same guidelines as the other policy. I just think it's more thoughtful, and I think it deserves consideration. But to answer your question, she did send it to committee. We were told as a board that it doesn't belong in committee, that you can't just demand to send something to committee. And then it all went to another direction from there. So all I'm asking for is the consideration that we put into reading this policy and considering it.
So we will discuss it in committee. Who's to stop another motion to rescind again? With
Every
all
one of
the-
us who votes no, which I did.
So we will take a look. It takes time for the administration to do the research, okay? This isn't just like you're gonna ask a question and then within 2 minutes we're gonna come up with, a solution to this. We will take a look. It takes time to review policy. It takes time for the administration to do the research. We will take a look, but all I'm asking and all I'm stating here is that this could have been said at the last meeting.
Let me take wait a minute if
That's
I
all.
can.
Go ahead.
Could I be recognized? All right. Let me respond to that, right? I have said all of that in our last meeting, except no one was listening. No one was listening. I had mentioned the NGSB policy during our last meeting already. What I said today, just now, if you go back and hear my talk last time, you would find the exact words, almost.
But that's what I'm saying. We were discussing it, and then abruptly a motion was made. That's when the discussion stopped. If you wanted the discussion
I mean,
to continue.
AJ's correct because I watched it like 3 times when I got home. And honestly, like really, I did say, like, what is it? You know, as policy, there's part of it where there's the board goal where we just review policy, but we're not making any changes or revision. We're just supposed to be becoming familiar with the board members. And then there's board policy where you're reviewing it because you're making a revision. That's what I was trying to get clarity on. In the middle of trying to get clarity is when the actual motion was made, the vote was made. That's what happened. But I do recall Lucy mentioning this other board policy,
we were having
but it
this
wasn't part of
discussion.
that conversation.
Right.
I would really much like to stop talking in circles right now. We've talked about this at this point ad nauseum. It's already
Motion to
been
adjourn.
asked. Is there any, before we do that, well, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
No.
Second.
You
Object.
could say no, but
Object.
you don't get to object. to
I
the
understand.
She does if she wants to.
Sure.
I seconded it.
motion. Fine. Mr.
Can we
Lemke,
have a
could
roll
you-
call vote for this one then?
Well, that is what we do, yes. Mr. Lemke, could you please call the roll? It's a motion to adjourn
Excuse-
that's been seconded by AJ.
Oh,
Mr. Lee,
no.
Ms. Asuna,
No.
Mr. Joshi.
Yes.
Ms. Lochran. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
No.
Mr. Pepe,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Calistri,
No.
Mr. Singer.
No. Pretty sure the motion failed, right?
Yes.
Cool. Is there any other new business to discuss?
Before we,
I would love to have an opportunity to speak tonight. Just on anything, please.
Ms. Asuna.
I would just like to, I don't know if I need to make a motion. I don't think we need a policy for this, but we've discussed it during the past year that I've been on the board. But we're asking our students to not use their phones in school. And I think that we need to model the behavior that we expect of our students, especially when we are entertaining guests to our meeting and we're trying to pay attention, whether we have a speaker that's training us or we have members of the public that are here to give their opinions. We need to model the behavior that we expect. And I would appreciate it if everyone would stay off of their phones and off of their computers. If you have things that you need to prepare it in advance at the meeting, but don't use that time to research and prepare what you're going to say later in the meeting. Be prepared.
I will say that I take notes during the meeting.
Of course.
So
I also take notes during the meeting.
I also take notes, but I'm not.
I take notes on my iPad and computer, so that is what I'm doing. Mr. Lee, you had a comment?
I know I made the motion earlier, but I do want to, I think that people deserve clarity on how I feel about this policy. And, I mentioned a lot of points before, but I think the most important thing to recognize is this policy is not mandatory. First of all, we have every right to repeal this policy. We're not going to get a lawsuit if we repeal this policy. But repealing this policy is not going to out any transgender students or put them in harm's way. It's the last thing I would want to do as a board member. And, I understand that it's my duty to always do what's best for our schools, for our students. I want to also point out as well that this policy won't exclude any transgender students from being able to participate in sports. Every child deserves the same educational and extracurricular opportunities. And also, keeping this policy is not going to prevent suicide by transgender students or eliminate bullying or harassment from our schools. And I think that making sure that we're supporting parent-driven initiatives that'll encourage respect and tolerance, and making sure that there's appropriate resources from organizations like Empower Somerset, making sure those are available is important because that's ultimately what's going to be preventing suicide. that's what's going to prevent bullying. And I think every student deserves an opportunity to be in an environment where they feel respected and where they're tolerated.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I want to go a little bit about mandatory policies. Do people understand why policies are marked mandatory? Just may as well ask you, do you guys know why they're marked mandatory? Why, Steve? Can you come on? This is a class. Come on. I'm calling on you.
Well, from what I've read, from emails that we've actually gotten, is that Strathmore marks mandatory policies when it's either following a rule or where there's been guidelines established by the Department of Ed at the federal or state level, they put that as mandatory.
And actually, some of those guidelines say that we must have a policy on this. And so that's why they're marked mandatory. And mandatory is just an arbitrary marking, indicating that when we go through CUSAC, when they come in and look at the board policies, that we have policies addressing this. So the mandatory is arbitrary. You can take it off all the policies if you want, just so we have the policies that we are required, that say the law says we need to have. And a lot of policies are there to reiterate other statutes in areas to make sure they're there. That's what this policy does. Sometimes clarifying and memorializing is good too, so that everyone understands. I can make a motion to remove M from all the policies, and it wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter any of them. We could do that if we want to. But we have to have the policies that are by law required. So the M is just an arbitrary M on there.
That's not correct. And actually, we have our legal board opinion that this policy is not mandatory.
Or just for clarification, are we on new business or old business now?
I mean,
think, or are we on?
I am on new business.
Okay.
Is there new business?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Our next meeting is April 8th.
Can you get me your contact information?